Today's episode of the Life of Phys Podcast is brought to you by Very Good Presets. All photographers know how saturated and underwhelming the preset market can be. You see some styles you like, you buy that pack of 20 presets, and when you put them on your photo, none of them look like what you expected. Very Good Presets has a different approach to color grading. Rather than a pack of presets, they offer them one at a time with modifiers to help refine that preset to your liking. Each preset has months of focus and calibration to make sure you get an incredible end result. Their film emulations have been used by major brands and artists such as country superstar Luke Combs. Additionally, a growing community of users rally around the brand and its developers to inspire and encourage one another. Very Good Presets strives to be an industry leader in a culture of generosity, giving regularly to organizations that help underserved communities have access to cameras, film, and photography equipment. My personal favorite preset is 1956, but with the recent release of the Portra 800, that may change soon. Check out Very Good Presets at verygoodpresets.com and try one or more of their presets using our discount code, Life of Phys. The Life of Phys podcast is lit by HoboLight. HoboLight is on a mission to empower creators to elevate their creativity with lighting kits made to last and built to inspire. These lights are bold, beautiful, and powerful because HoboLight believes that your lights deserve to be seen. To learn more, follow them on Instagram at HoboLite. Uh-oh. He forgot everything.
Oh shit, the light's on. No.
It's the Ron Burgundy. He'll read anything on the teleprompter.
Oh, we're on? I don't believe you. No, the editing suite stuff is interesting. Like, it's just they all have their pros and cons, and they definitely have like strengths and weaknesses. And like, I'm 100% indoctrinated into the Adobe mindset of like how their tools interact with each other. And kind of their like product design ethos of like, you know, what their sliders do and how the different toolbars are laid out, and you know how their masking tools work and all that kind of stuff. And that's important. It gives you a very like solid workflow when you understand all of that stuff and you've got it kind of, you know, mapped out like the back of your hand. And Capture One is just real different in that regard. Like, I don't know if you've messed with it a whole lot.
I have it, and I've used it for a while.
I hate the UI UX of Capture One. Like, one of the biggest pet peeves for me about how Capture One works, and you know what? I'll put this out there and say that maybe I'm just missing something, but like, I don't like the fact that when you want to do something, I do that thing when I'm editing where I pixel peep and then I zoom out really far.
Yeah.
Right. So I go from like, the term I always like to say is like from grain to glass, right? Like when people ask me a question, like, it's like, okay, do you want glass or do you want grain? And I'm like, what the hell do you mean? It's like, well, glass is made of grains of sand. I can give you the whole picture, or I can like break this down by molecule, right? So which one do you want? That sort of thing. And I do that a lot when I'm editing. So I'll kind of like pull up the image at first and scroll through and just kind of like see how each one feels to my eye as I'm, you know, just kind of rifling through them, right? And not with any sort of like specificity. I'm not looking for anything. I'm very much essentially like swiping through to find the one that hits me in the same way that the moment hit me, right? And when I find that image, I'll tear into that one, and then I'll backwards edit from that one to the other ones, right? So like that night where, you know, when Dave and I were hanging out or whatever at Font's Point, there's a bunch of those images because I cracked off a lot of rolls of film in that like 45 minutes or hour or whatever that we were there, right? And they can't all be the same because the light was changing really quick and drastically. But like, I think I went through like 3 rolls of Portra 800 and the Mamiya and a roll of the slide film in the M6 and something else. Because I came there with a roll. That Kodak's not Kodak's the Kodak Double X, the cinema black and white film. I had that in the camera already, so I finished that and then loaded in the slide film while we were there, right? Just kind of I YOLO'd. I was like, oh, slide film? Yeah. All right, whatever. I mean, now's a good time as any. And just sort of like crammed it in there and started cracking shit off. So anyways, I just started blasting like but like when I sit down with any image, but particularly the film stuff, um because I feel like the biggest rule that I've learned when it comes to film is to have no expectations. Like, do what you can to prep and know what you're shooting and how it needs to be shot. But unless you're developing it and scanning it yourself, just leave off expectations, because at the end of the day, you don't know if the film was treated right before you bought it. You don't know the temperatures that it was at. You don't know if the camera like messed up inside and put some big giant scratch through the roll. You know what I mean? So it's like if you build up too many expectations, I feel like with a film roll, and then you get it back and it's sort of like, oh, that film must have not been stored properly. It's all green. Like it's just real like debasing. Anyways, so I'll sit there and I'll just kind of rifle through and I'll find like the one image that hits that like, oh yeah, that's what it was like, right? And then edit that and essentially make a preset from that one. And then I'll go back through all the other images that match that night and just start applying that preset that I just created to see how analogous I can make the whole set. But when I'm editing, so Adobe makes that really easy because Lightroom's editing suite, you can, zoom to fit, you can blow it up 1,000,000% and like look at little tiny pixels and half pixels and stuff. But then with like a double click or like a roll of the mouse, you can zoom it out to essentially like a thumbnail size, right? And Capture One doesn't allow you to do that. Like all of Capture One's like workflow tools are all kind of like marred by smoke and mirrors comparatively to Adobe. But Capture One's color management, and I honestly only learned this shooting the GFX because Capture One handles Fuji color science better than anybody else. Period. Right? The only one that you find missing on Capture One, all of Hasselblad. Hasselblad, excuse me. Uh, which is, it's purposeful, right? Because it's a phase one software. So phase one isn't going to support, I guess, Hasselblad. Um, but I saw that very clearly when I used to edit GFX files, the manner in which the colors were reproduced, much more aligned with how I remember seeing it like in the viewfinder, right? Particularly on the film sim stuff, or the
Sorry, my son lost his pizza.
lost his pizza. How do you lose a pizza?
With everybody here, it's usually you have to order like 5 pizzas, right? So now
Yeah.
there's only 4 of us here, so there's 3 pizzas. So 2 of the boys
Oh,
split a pizza, right? So they have half
yeah.
pepperoni, and then the other guy only will eat cheese. So he was like, "Well, Caleb took pepperoni out of this one." I was like, "Yeah, it's half and half." He's like, "Oh." Light bulb goes on. Ding.
So it's that Home Alone scene. It's like, where's my cheese pizza?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot I ate it. Punch to the throat.
And this is why we are on Ansley Stewart Part 3.
Yeah, part two was a bust though. I feel like that was just a My mind was not there. Anyways, um, but no, like I noticed that very specifically with the Fuji files on Capture One, and that's essentially the only reason why I ever like gave Capture One a shot. But now, especially kind of learning DaVinci Resolve and the way DaVinci handles their color space transform and like camera profiles and color science and all that kind of stuff, I really like DaVinci Resolve. And I'll talk about that later, but like Capture One, the biggest thing that Adobe does not allow you to do, which is gigantically frustrating, is like if it sees that the file, the raw file or the DNG or whatever that's coming in is, say, a Sony raw file, like an AR, I think it's ARW file, it won't allow you to like, it'll give, you can change the camera, the color profile to the matching profile of the camera. So whatever those profiles are that Sony has, like neutral and vivid and portrait and landscape and blah, blah, blah. Or you can change it into any of the Adobe color profiles, right? So like Adobe Standard, landscape, portrait, neutral, black and white, whatever. And then they have those like creative profiles or whatever they call them. But you can't say, for example, go in there and tell Adobe like, oh, yeah, this is a Sony file, but I want it to replicate a Canon color science, right? And that's exactly what you can do with DaVinci, right? Because you can stick a color space transform onto every node and delineate the input color space that's coming in and then what you want it to transform it into, right? And it does that conversion. So like you can take a Sony, like an S-Log3 color profile and smush it into like an RE log profile and then edit from there and then export the whole file in a different color space that conforms to whatever you need to deliver it to, whether that be like Rec 709 or Rec 2020 or whatever, right? But Adobe doesn't allow you to do that in Lightroom. And Capture One definitely does. And that's really cool because, and I remember when I figured this out, I was messing with like an M11 file. And the M11 files are they're real dense. Like those DNGs are real heavy if you're using them at their full resolution or whatever. So they've got a whole lot of information. And I remember I was just sort of like clicking down the color profile list and I'm like, oh, I can change this into a phase one, like an IQ, like 150 megapixel, like trichromatic color science. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, uh, yeah, I will totally use that $60,000 color science. Yes, and thank you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Um, I mean, the way around that is to like make an ICC profile with like a color checker for like every time you go out to shoot with every lens that you're going to shoot and stuff like that. Because that you can make those profiles too and then upload them into Adobe, but Adobe doesn't give you the ability to do it as I guess like a native profile that they'll allow you to choose from the menu of.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, but I hate all of the other stuff about how Capture One works. So what I found myself doing is like messing with color profiles and switching it to the manner that I want. I've been experimenting, like whether the workflow is better to do essentially a color space transform on the front end of the file than like export it as a big gigantic TIFF file that's uncompressed and then edit that in either like Photoshop or Camera Raw and then export it from Capture One because it's also very good at all of its export render profiles, particularly in the printing, like physical media sense. You have a lot of control over it that in that way, or whether it's going to be better for me to like do everything that I want to. And I feel like this is a bad idea, but do everything that I want to it in the Adobe suite, then do like a final export or something with a gigantic file and then like squish it into the color space that I want to, and then transform it out to whatever color space I want it to deliver it in. I feel like that's the worst idea. See, this is that kind of thing that leads me down the route of like, maybe I should just shoot black and white. Like, you know, not that it's easy. I don't know about you though. Like, it's funny because I know, how do I say this? Because I don't want to come off like I'm throwing shade at anyone. I know like the thing that you're supposed to do, I guess, is like, oh, you need a style. You need like a consistent look. You need this, that, and the other, right? And I'm too, I don't know, maybe I'm too like neurospicy or something for it, but like I just I don't like having a consistent style in that manner because every image is different. And like if I'm going based off of like what feels right for a certain image, I don't necessarily want like, oh, all of this, like my signature look is teal and orange or something. You know what I mean? You know what I mean though, right?
I
Like
do.
I don't necessarily want to like pigeonhole myself like that. And it's funny because black and white becomes way harder for me to shoot as a result. Uh, uh, Black and white is really hard for me to shoot as a result of that. Um, but it makes it easier on the back end. Like when I take a black and white image, if I shoot like a black and white roll of film or something, um, I'll do like really quick corrections, like 5 or 10 minutes tops, and I'm done. A black and white image, when I see the scan, it's a yes or no. Like I know it right then. You know what I mean? Whereas color images are always like I can vibe with it, and I feel like I'm doing the memory justice, and then it becomes this like, okay, but how good can I get it? Like challenge, right? And I'm a rabbit hole person. So like that can be one of those things where I'll like edit and edit and edit for like little teensy things. Probably stuff that like, especially on like Instagram uploads, doesn't actually translate. But like I can see it and I know that it's there, you know? And that kind of stuff really annoys me to like the nth degree. Maybe I should just start shooting black and white. Like
No, man, your color stuff is
five
way too
minute
good.
edit, 5 minute edit, 5 minute edit.
The problem I see is when everybody wants to be uniform in their profiles, which I can't stand because I don't shoot that way.
Yeah.
They limit themselves to what they capture because I can tell you when I look at, say, a family photographer who goes out and shoots the same place, the same people,
Hmm.
the same setup, and they edit it with that goddamn tan fucking profile that they found on
Oh yeah, the
Facebook for
brown,
99 cents.
moody brown.
Yep. Drives me
Yeah.
up the wall.
Really?
Oh. And you're
I
like,
mean,
every family, the same color. You know that skin tone
I'll
doesn't
tell you
work.
this. I think that the context matters in that, right? Because those photographers like wedding photographers and uh like birth photographer, I guess maternity
Maternity. Yeah.
photography and stuff like that. Like they definitely have to live off of the idea that those clients that they're getting coming in are like they're coming in because of that look, right? I want you to do this. I want it to look like this. So I understand that. I think it's that I don't want to boil it down and start some like tire fire of an argument, but it's like, do you want to be a Metallica or do you want to be Slayer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yes, you can make a career doing the exact same album over and over and over and over again, or you can be very like really varied and split your audience like right down the middle and like, wait, but you were a metal band. Why are you doing a country song? Like that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you can sing about Satan and Weedle Weedle for 45 years or something.
Weedle,
right?
Weedle.
We know what Kerry King solos sound like.
Weedle, Weedle, Weedle. That's going to be in my head all night. My kids are going to say something. I'm going to be like, Weedle, Weedle.
You have to have the Tom Araya scream after it, the Weedle, 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 and then just the
Oh, they'd all be freaked out and never sleep again.
But like, not that I'm, because I like both bands, right? And I like both styles. I just, for my own, I guess my own sanity, I wonder on a personal level, the folks that find that style and just start running with it for 10 years or something, like is it a specific business purpose that's the intent behind it for sticking with that, or like do you just like that personally so much? You know what I mean? And I don't know, like, and mind you, I'm not good by any measure of it, right? Like I'm 100% just out here like trying to vibe myself into what like capture images that do it for me, right? And like people that like them, that's awesome too. But like if the internet went away tomorrow, I would still take photos. You know what I mean?
I think that's a good question. How many people do you think would drop off if the internet was no longer there?
I don't know. Because I don't know that any answer is going to be really good for that, right? Because like I can't, in the spirit of not wanting to be like gatekeepy, but the other side of the coin of gatekeepy and being judgy for like what someone wants to do and placing opinion on whether something is good, bad, or indifferent about it. Like I can't tell somebody that, like they want to solely photograph bug faces. I love macro shots. They impress the hell out of me. And like the technical prowess that goes into those shots blows my mind. But like, man, it just doesn't get my juices flowing personally.
Yep.
Right. Same with astrophotography. Astrophotography, I've had my friends ask me like, "Oh, so when are you going to get into astro?" I'm like, never. Like, I am not a kind of person that could half-ass getting into astrophotography, and I would 100% be bankrupt tomorrow after being like, well, going all in on astro and like telescope stations and like hard drives and servers and shit to like it blows my mind the stuff that those folks get, right? But like the processing and the time spent gathering that data for them to compile those images and like way beyond my squirrel kind of attitude. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I have all the respect in the world for them because God damn it, are they good at what they do?
Yep.
And the images that they're able to bring of light that is before we were a species absolutely floors me. Right? Yeah. I remember the first time I took a Milky Way photo. Like I was giggling like I was 2 years old again and had just like found the door stopper. Right? Like, and it really astounded me because what the camera sensor was able to see, I couldn't actually see with my naked eye, right? And so I kind of set the photo up and I'm like, I think that's the Milky Way. Like, and I was out there in the middle of Utah, like by Factory Butte and Hanksville and stuff. So there was no one out there. And there was no light pollution. And I was just out there camping next to Factory Butte by myself. And so I was kind of like, I'm out there like getting my camp set up and like doing my little, getting my stupid little food going, little MRE meal and whatnot. And like the light bulb kind of went on in my head and I'm like, look up, dummy. And I sort of looked up and I could see like that like milky translucency thing that the Milky Way does when the sun is still close enough to the horizon, but has definitely set. At the time, I had a Q2. That's what I actually took that photo, like those photos with, is a Q2, and because it was the widest angle lens that I had, and I was just like, I wonder if it'll do it. So I pulled out the Q2 and I cranked the lens down to, I guess 1.7 is what that lens does that's on there, and stuck it on like a travel tripod and just sort of went, all right, let's see. And that first photo came out and I saw it on the viewfinder and I was just like, or on the back screen. And I was like, oh, this rules. Whoa. Like I just discovered fire,
Yeah.
And took a bunch of photos and stuff. And then it's like, I got like back to civilization and stuff. And I'm sitting there editing all this stuff. And I'm just like, a bunch of them were blurry because I was trying to mess with like aperture and shutter speed and all this kind of stuff. And as cool as they were, then I would look at some of the astrophotographers that I follow, and I was like, oh no, nope.
Yep.
This is a dangerous drug. I need to put that needle right down. Like,
But I want to try it.
Yeah.
I think I wanna.
You don't want this. I think I kind of want it. But no, I mean, that's all to say in a very long way. Like, I don't want to knock anybody for what they enjoy, and I definitely don't want to knock anybody for their intent of why they do what they do, right? I just, I know from my own personal reasons, like, I wouldn't stop taking photos if I never was able to show them to anyone again, right? Because it's definitely this kind of like personal endeavor of I see something in my head and I want to turn it into a tangible thing. And that's honestly kind of like what got me started or put the bug in my ass to go from digital photography to learning film, because it was one step closer to that idea of, well, I've made something tangible on a color negative film or whatever. Yeah, it's a negative, but it's still a tangible slide. There's what's that dude's name? Uh, I'm probably going to mispronounce it. I'm pretty sure it's Dancer, Danzernzer, or something like that. He's putting together this like project, which is insane. Dude found like this giant archive of his grandpa's photography or photos or whatever, and they're all on slide film, right? Grandpa's long gone, but this entire like archive of his grandpa's work, and his grandpa ruled. Like, and he's been sharing it. He actually created like a specific Instagram account just to share those as he's like going through this archive and rescanning them and uploading them and stuff. He's sharing them there as well. Man, like it's almost kind of like the Vivian Meyer thing where none of these people they became great photographers in their own right, and they weren't ever sharing it with the masses. They were doing it for their own enjoyment, their own accomplishment or whatever. Like, you look through Vivian Meyer's work and there's like a ton of selfies, right? Like her and her TLR, which is bitching in its own right, right? But she didn't care about, from what I understand, anyways, like she wasn't trying to do it for like acclaim or fame or any of that kind of stuff. It was just like she wants to take photos. That dude's grandpa, he's documenting his life. And then his grandpa dies, and now his grandson is like, holy shit, I'm a photographer. I guess it runs in the family.
Yeah.
Right. And this just like masterclass of old Kodachrome slides.
Best.
Like there's this one photo that I guess his grandpa took while he was on a plane, like looking out. It bends my mind. Like it is one of those images that if I took that, that would be one of those ones that like I would plaster the front of my house with it. Like, look at this thing that I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But not in that kind of regard. It's just like the tones and the motion. It looks like it came out of like a really high end like Hollywood movie, right? And it was just that guy like documenting a moment that he saw, right? With the technology that was at hand at the time. And I just kind of wonder, like, with how we consume and how we record media now, like how much of that's going to be left over for like generations. Like, is that going to be one of those things where like somebody's grandkid finds a hard drive? You know what I mean? Like, hopefully it's not corrupt. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully there weren't too many magnets around. Like those sort of ideas, Um, but that's not predicated on me sharing any of that stuff with anyone, right? It's nice to be able to share with my friends and hype each other up and bounce ideas off of each other because we're all kind of in that same game together of trying to get each other better. And like, I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm real weird about when people are like, "Oh, you're not going to get better if you're not always getting critiqued." Like, huh? Like, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but like critiqued based on what? Because what are you defining good as? You know what I mean? Like it always bugs me out when somebody is like, "Oh, I love this photo that you took or whatever," because a lot of the times in my head when I look at my images, there's not anything special to me about them because they're mine, right? It's almost like that same weirdness when you hear your voice on a recording for the first time and you're like, that's what I sound like." You know? Uh,
And then every stranger on the internet goes, "Oh my God, your voice."
right. Right. So it's like, who's wrong? Am I wrong? Or all of y'all just have really bad taste? I don't like, and like, I've seen how you act on the internet. I don't trust any of y'all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's like that video I just posted.
Which one?
The 9 minute.
The one where you were trying to get used to the camera.
Yeah. And like the
Mhm.
first guy's like, and that voice, I'm like, oh, Jesus, fuck. Really? Every single time I post anything.
Yeah, that bugged me out on the Dave video too. A little bit. But see, it's funny, right? Because like I almost wanted like I was going to tell you that morning when I saw it, like if anything that should gas you up,
Yeah.
right? I know it's weird because it's like you have to kind of almost come out of your own like discomfort of like coming out of your shell or whatever. And that can be really uncomfortable. Um, but I also think that it's expo mm, exposure therapy helps that kind of thing. Um, like I definitely don't like being on camera and I don't like hearing myself speak. It's weird to me.
Yeah.
Uh, one of my biggest, like, what do the kids say nowadays? The ick is when I'm on like a phone call with someone, like cell phone, and it does that thing where it starts repeating like you're in an echo chamber. Dude, 9 times out of 10, if that's not an important call, I'm hanging up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what happened. The call dropped. Like, and I'll walk around to find a better spot until it stops doing that. Right. The ick is strong with that experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time, right, it's important if you find a voice because the people that are connecting with that message and what you're doing that's affecting their life, I think that's one of the things that like it's a good push to get you out of that discomfort zone because at the end of the day, like I've helped people change tires on the side of the road and stuff before, right? That's uncomfortable, but it helped them and they needed that help,
Yeah.
right? And I think the same sort of thing sort of applies to these sort of conversations, right? And the more you do it, the easier and more natural it become. Actually, funny you should like funny conversation here, right? Because one of the guys that I've been following for a while is Peter Lindgren, right? Um, and I guess it was this last week. He posted this video where he was like moving out of the apartment that essentially he built his entire YouTube persona and channel and following and business and everything out of, right? Because he had that like separate office space, which was rad. But now he built his own house and he's moving into it with his family and stuff, right? So there was that like goodbye video. And he said something on there that really struck a nerve with me because it was one of those rare moments of large creators like that being very like having a whole lot of humility, right? And relating on this very specific granular level of what anybody getting their feet wet in this sort of creative space is going to feel. And what he was talking about is when he started his channel, he would like tell his wife to go in the other room and just not say anything and act like she didn't hear him. Because that dude who, if I understand his history right, he was like a pro bodybuilder and did like, physique competitions and dude was used to being essentially half naked in front of people, right? That did not bother him. But the vulnerability that he felt and the embarrassment that he said that he was feeling because he was talking to a camera, he didn't want the closest person that he had in his life to be a part of that embarrassment, right? And it just really hit, like it struck a real specific chord with me. Because you don't see those giant creators come out of that shell in that manner. I think a lot of the times, and especially nowadays when we're all kind of talking about, oh, you need to be authentic and you need to do this and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think that that feeling is something that you script, right? Like, I think that's one of those things of that dude just remembering, like, in both a very valid, but also a very how silly is that in hindsight kind of retrospective, right? And I think it's applicable for any of us that are trying to enter that sort of space. Um, he's one of those creators that like I don't know. He's interesting because the stuff that he does doesn't really necessarily resonate with me, right? Because he really likes like the high tech thingies and like, like super high def and drones and this, that, and the other. But like what I actually connect with and resonate with him as a creator, as somebody that I like to follow and watch, is his personality and how he kind of is navigating life and how he's building out a business and like, in parallel with these really large accomplishments that are coming to pass as a result of that effort and that discomfort and stuff, right? Kind of like Teppo, I guess, too. When I first, I think, found Teppo, I didn't realize that he was Maddie Hopoya's brother. And he was still kind of a small, I think he only had like a few thousand subscribers or something on his YouTube at that point. And it was cool because you could kind of like interact with him and talk to him and stuff, right? Like, I think he went out like off-roading or something one time, and I was like, dude, if you're ever in Texas, let's raptor. Like
Let's raptor.
Yeah. Let's go rappy in the desert. That would be rad. And like he was just like, yeah, dude, that would be awesome. I don't think that applies now that he's over 100K. But like
there's something about him. I think he's still open to. It's like Jason Ramon, Stock Easy.
Oh yeah,
man, that guy. I was fresh, and I was like, oh, I love the way you shoot street.
Yeah,
I just wanted you to know I love the way you shoot street in a DM. He came back with a whole paragraph, asked me what I shot with. And
really?
then, ever since then, we chat anytime he's free. We're still trying to line up an episode, which is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
But I like when a creator who has that following, like who has blown up and they're at those numbers, still remembers where they came from. And they're still willing to be open and chat.
He's on, I don't want to say on tour, but he's essentially Momoa's like photographer at this point, right? And that's kind of the point that I was going to get with. Like Momoa, from all that I understand about him, because he's real, like Momoa is real big into like the vintage instruments and guitars and bass, and he really likes that old grungy musician stuff. From all accounts that I've heard from Momoa, that of those like 2 degrees of separation type people and stuff, like he's a really down to earth, for as huge of a superstar as that dude is, right? He's very down to earth and still grounded to the people that are around him. And so it's not too surprising that he would also surround himself with like-minded people that are still in that same space. You know what I mean? Because I'm very much of the opinion that I don't buy into that idea that like money ruins people. I think money exposes who you are.
Yep.
Money is like is like liquor. You know what I mean? Like people don't become assholes when they're drunk. They just don't have the ability to hide how big of an asshole they are anymore.
Yep.
And I think that's what money does, right? I think that it can ruin sometimes people, right? Because they forget for a myriad of reasons or whatever. But like I definitely kind of feel like that's one of those situations where like good people, good character will survive expansion. And especially with those people that are very genuine and they're very like they want to be generous with those around them. When they get huge and they start making more money and they get fame and all this kind of stuff, you hear that a lot, right? Like people that have never had like a pot to piss in, they win the lottery and then they're broke a year later because they gave all the money away to their friends.
Yep.
Right? Like that sort of thing. Because it's not about hoarding all of that wealth. It's like, dude, like I won, so everybody wins around me. And that just seems very antithetical, I guess, to the common, I guess, advice that we kind of all live under, right? It's like, oh, you get this much money. Well, you need to make more. You need to keep on hoarding all of that money. Don't spend it. You need more. You need more. You need more. And it's like, it's nice to see examples of people like that that have kind of pushed through, made it to the other side of that, and chose to follow their character. You know what I mean? And start spreading that good in the circles where they can. So that's cool. Cause yeah, like his his photography is badass, just in a general sense. His sense of color theory and like tones and mood, that it's Jason, right?
Yep.
Roman?
Roman,
His
yeah.
last name is Roman. Like the tone that he sets in all of the photos that I've seen of those moments make me feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do well and consistently, you know? I like, especially if you're like on the go like that, in that manner. It's respectable. It's really cool.
Yeah. They just did the On the Roam show. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it was super cool. Like Jason Momoa gifts Todd Hido a Leica SL3.
Oh, really?
So moved Hido over to Leica and then went with Hido in his little car to Hido's old neighborhood in San Francisco in the fog to take photos. You know, and then cars are coming around. And he's like, "Oh, you need more light? I'll just park my truck right here, and we'll light it all up for you." And
Yeah.
people, you can see the people in the car going, "Holy shit, that's Jason Momoa."
Is that who I think it is? Just
Yeah.
keep driving. Just keep driving. Like, yeah, they went to if I remember right, I think they filmed an episode at a guitar store in Nashville called Carter's Vintage. Uh I actually messaged Jason, not Momoa, but because I had a guitar that was on consignment up there. I was like, you should get like Moa to play this. It's a really great one. Take photos of it. He did not respond. I'm pretty sure that went into his request folder. Damn it. But no. But you know, I think that that's really cool. It's I don't know. I think that you've done a very good job of putting yourself out there at this point, right? And I think you're starting to see that sort of like that snowball effect,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
Um, that idea that like, you know, positive, not to be like toxic positive or whatever, but like positive energy is explosive and negative energy is very implosive. Like the crappier you feel, you're just bringing more crap a lot of the time in. Um, I think you're doing a really good job of spreading that, you know, I mean, the hashtag, right? Like community over competition, but I think you're living that very like authentically too. And it's really it's cool to see like from that fly on the wall sort of perspective,
Oh
you
no, we're
know.
friends. You can tell everybody. We send messages all day long.
Well, that too, but I mean, I don't know.
I get what you mean. I
It's
appreciate that.
cool to see like friends and stuff like achieving goals, right? And working through, particularly like working through what they saw as uncomfortable situations, or like coming out of their shell and putting themselves into uh, to places and just allowing the risk of something failing to be there and doing it anyways,
Yeah.
right?
So that's why I
That's
left
cool.
the beginning of that video in,
Hmm.
where I like you could see me take the big breath, trying to
Oh
get
yeah,
myself ready, and I wanted
yeah,
people to see it's like I was not comfortable at all,
yeah.
and it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and people were coming into because there's a hockey arena right where I'm looking, and
Man, you
people,
really are Canadian.
oh yeah,
Like
man,
just everything.
everything, man. We got the hockey. They curl in there too. You know what curling is? Do you have it down there?
I'm sure we do. I know what it is. I've never seen somebody do it in real
It's like
life. So
watching
at this
paint
point,
drying.
it's Antarctica to me.
Yeah.
Like,
So I was really uncomfortable while I did it. And I filmed that video the same time I filmed the first one, the one I did
really?
release. So it was the same morning.
I gotcha.
I was listening to it. So I was just going through my phone and I was flicking through and I listened to it. And I could see how uncomfortable I was trying to get prepared to like basically throw myself to the wolves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to it a few times and I'm like, I really like the message that I'm spreading.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that I'm just being me. There's zero edit to it. I took the 9 minutes and 57 seconds or 53 seconds and I uploaded it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was neat to see like all the comments just start going.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept waiting for a negative one and everybody was so positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened was on the weekend, I went out with a friend of mine, his name's Steve, and we were just talking and he looked at me and he's like, you realize like, because I've always been an anti-influencer. There's something about that whole thing that and he goes, you realize you're being influential right now, right? And I looked at him and I was like, oh man. And then I was like, you know what? As much as I love the community over competition thing, and I'll continue to talk about it and push it.
Yeah.
Kind of leaning towards working into a different kind of community aspect.
Really?
Same process, same everything. It's hard for people to see the difference between good competition and bad competition without having to explain it every time I talk to them.
So, question then. Let me try to word this right. Give me a second to like get my mind in the correct neural plasticity state. If you know what it means, right? And you're looking for the folks that it resonates with on a natural level, right? Do you think that it's better for you to pivot away from using that so that you don't feel like you need to define that for folks who just don't get it? Because a lot of the times, like, it's not that they don't get it, they just want to be like contrarian dickheads, right? Like bad faith, like, oh, well, what does that mean? But I want to compete. I'm competing with myself. That's good competition. What do you mean? I don't like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that it would do more? I guess essentially, like, if you're doing good and you understand what your message is, right? And you understand how you've defined that, particularly now that there's this momentum that's building where you've got that snowball thing, do you think that it would be doing a disservice to the momentum that you've already started to like build by pivoting away from it just to appease people that don't want to get it anyways?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I could never not use it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's fantastic to see it constantly being used everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see
Yeah, I think for the first time I saw it, like the algorithm picked it up
yeah,
and showed me an account that you don't follow, that doesn't follow you, that I don't follow, that does not follow me. And it was on Threads, and it was like, I'm all about this community over competition thing. And I was like,
yeah.
do you know where you got that from?
Yeah, I'm stoked on it. So I understand what you're saying. I mean, that's my own inner demon that I battle. Gotcha. Is like things are going smoothly.
Sure.
And my brain's like, something's gonna happen. You know?
Oh yeah, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop or whatever.
And yeah. I know where I'm at. So I mean, that video I posted, do you know who Matt Day is?
Yeah, of course.
So he liked it. And I was like, holy shit.
That's cool.
Matt Day saw my shit. And, and then I start looking at like the like list, and there's like Stock Easy and some other big name guys who I love what they do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how to really explain it. I know it would do a disservice for sure. I mean, there's no way I can't constantly use it and use it in the same way, because that little hashtag is what built this podcast.
Sure.
And I owe it to that hashtag to keep it here and be authentic about it. I think why I'm questioning a lot of this podcast currently, it was, my wife and I got in a huge fight 2 nights ago from like 11 until 3 in the morning. Awesome. Let me tell you, it was fantastic. I have trouble with crowds. So being in big crowds anymore, ever since I used to work in a bar, I can't do it. There was guys stabbed. There was guys shot. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Because instantly my brain is looking at everybody around us. I don't focus on fun. I focus on safety. And it just doesn't do me any good.
Sure.
And I have a hard time explaining that to her, because she's always like, well, you've never given me a reason why. I'm like, well, it doesn't work for me, because she wants to go to Pearl Jam. And I'm like, awesome, go enjoy, take one of your girlfriends, have a good time. And she's, that I'd rather do it with you. I can't do big crowds. It was like pulling teeth to get me to go to Fleetwood Mac.
Really?
And it was it's my favorite band in the world. And it was
really,
yeah, I love Fleetwood Mac.
That's cool.
My mom used to play it.
Gotcha.
So that's where I first heard The Chain and that song.
Yeah.
As soon as that freaking the bass line hits, I'm like, So
right back.
Yeah. So when they announced they were doing that final tour, but the whole band was back together, I was like, I gotta go, because the year prior, Christy McVie wasn't part of it.
Okay.
They had someone else, and I couldn't afford to keep my tickets, so I had to sell them. My wife Tara, for my birthday, she bought tickets for me. And as much as I love that band, it was an uncomfortable night.
Really?
And I just focused on the music, and I'm working on it. So this podcast for me is about working on my own self-doubt and working on my own issues and my own mental health. And then she questions what I'm doing. She's like, well, you're not being authentic. I'm like, I'm being more than authentic. I'm being me. I'm expressing myself. But she got it in my head that I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
So I started going, oh man, should I quit? Like, should I stop? If I'm not being authentic, then I'm not living up to what I'm trying to practice.
Sure.
And then the next morning she's like, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. You just called me fake. And I'm the first to admit I'm a fucking asshole when my buttons get pushed. There's nothing I can do about it. The only thing I ever said in my life is I would never raise my kids like my dad raised me. I've never spanked my kids. I've yelled at my kids. I've sworn at my kids. I've done all that shit. My kids are always clothed. They're fed. They're happy. They're healthy. And they go to school. They have a good life. And they don't want for anything. So I've done my job as a parent. I never beat them like I got beat. I never had a gun held to my head like he did to me. I've never done any of that shit. Quit drinking because my children were born. When my ex-wife and I split up, most men head to the fucking hills. I took all of my children and said, see you later. Have a good life. Let us know what you need.
Yeah.
So I think I've actually been the most authentic I've been in the last 49 years of my life. In the last 3 months, I've done this podcast.
Really?
I've been open. I've been willing to share what I've gone through. And I'm doing it all because if it helps one person in this world, if this podcast reaches one person and makes them go, I'm going to try something, or I'm not going to hurt myself, then I did my job.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's where a lot of this is coming from, is that I questioned myself after she said that.
Do you think that... No, man. I mean, so, I've been married for a while too. and we've been together for a decade now, right? And it's funny because I don't want to go too like deep down this rabbit hole or whatever, but like I know when we would have been the unlikely couple. Like I don't think that any of either of our friend groups when we got together would have gone, "Oh yeah," like they would have never tried to set us up with each other,
Yeah.
right? Because we didn't have anything in common. Like music, art, lifestyle, ambition, any of those things. But we agreed on like the big three things. And it was like marriage, kids, and religion. Those were the three things. We knew that we agreed on that, and she felt safe around me. That's it.
Yeah.
And like literally from that basis, from that start point, that's what our entire relationship has been built off of. And like we're very unbecoming about our relationship too. Like, like when we decided to get married, it was literally a conversation of, "Hey, do you feel like getting married?" "Okay." "When?" "I don't know, next week." And we like got our parents to come in and we went to the courthouse.
Yeah.
We had lunch and that's it. That's how we got married. And then like, posted on Facebook. And everybody's going, "What the fuck?" Like,
Yeah.
what happened? That sort of thing. And it's just always kind of been that sort of thing, right? I say that though to say that when you forge a relationship based on commonalities that are, I don't know, isolated, but like separated from other parts of your personality, right? I think it's one of those things where as you're growing, right? And as you're evolving as a person, it can seem to someone who knows you that as you're evolving or as you're showing a new part of yourself that they've never seen before or they're not used to necessarily, that can come off as inauthentic because they're not familiar with it. And in that moment, it can almost be a surprise to somebody that thinks that they've known you, that have been there with you for all of, turmoil, ups, downs, sick, health, all that other stuff, right? But if they don't know that part of you because it's just never come out, right? Like I almost feel like it's a valid critique until it's like, "Oh, this is just a part of you that I haven't seen." It's not necessarily that you're inauthentic. This is just something that I need to learn about you. You know what I mean? And like, because I know that I'm sure my wife has the same sort of like things, right? And vice versa, right? Um, because I think that's part of like getting older, right? And maturing and what is that saying? Uh the difference between intelligence and wisdom is intelligence is knowing that tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing that tomato doesn't go in a fruit salad. Like,
But this whole thing that I'm doing now it's like therapy. It's releasing me. It's allowing me to speak my mind.
sure.
It's allowing me to get all those doubts out of my mind, all while letting other people feel free to share the same things. And I'm carrying that through the whole day now.
Hmm.
So I think you were spot on. I honestly think what's happening is this new version of me is coming out, or the real version of me that I've been hiding for years.
Just another piece, though, because how long have you've been doing photography at this point?
I'm just about to cross into 6 years.
Okay, and how long have you connected with the act of photography as therapy? as you've mentioned before.
About 3 years.
So about half of that time, like
Yeah.
you've been kind of like adjusting yourself into the realization that like this is one of the things that levels me out and grounds me,
Yeah.
right? I would imagine as that side like comes out of its shell, right? And you're learning a new version of yourself too. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things where people will get really couples can get real crossways with that because they're unwilling to not only allow the partner to grow, but to accept that they're growing in parallel, right? And sometimes that works because who you grow into as you get older and you mature and stuff, you have matured in parallel, right? And you actually haven't gotten any further away, even though it kind of seems like it at points. And then some people just grow apart, and it's not even a thing of like, you suck, you're horrible, whatever. It's just like neither of us are the same people when we got together, like that
Yeah.
sort of thing, right? But I tend to think that particularly for couples who may have started relationships when they were in guarded states, right? As they grow together and they learn to be comfortable and feel safe to allow those little parts to come out more authentically and more freely, I guess, right? That it can be very disarming to some degree, but it can also be the exact opposite. Kind of like the what we were talking about earlier, like Lindgren of like, go in that room and don't listen to me because it's embarrassing for you to hear me talk to a camera by myself. Right? Like it seems so silly, but like that's a very legit and visceral emotion, you know? Um, I think it's always good when you can have a disagreement like that, talk through it, and then when cooler heads prevail, kind of go, I didn't mean it like that. I know how you took it. I'm sorry. And appreciate that the person that your partner is not necessarily growing for your benefit specifically and getting better for your benefit specifically, but that they're focusing on making themselves a better version of themselves because the more we're attentive to that, the better it is for everybody that we have influence and effect on, right?
I agree.
And I think that can always be a little bit interesting and probably scary to see come out because it's like there's always that risk involved of like, oh, they're changing, they're evolving, they're adapting, right? They're getting better. Are they going to get so better that they don't feel like I need to be there to be the other like the significant other anymore,
Mm.
right? Um, and I think kind of in that same sort of like insecurity kind of feeling, not that it has any like legitimacy, right? But anytime anyone, particularly loved ones that you're so used to being a certain way and a certain person and stuff, anytime they start making really like what seemingly is radical shifts, it can be very destabilizing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
this definitely
maybe it
was a
doesn't
big
have any
shift.
like valid, huh?
This was definitely a big shift, this whole podcast, because
But that's
it
kind of what I
shifted
mean
me.
is
Yeah.
like I I think it's one of those things from what you've told me anyways and what I've heard you describe on other episodes and other discussions with your podcast guests. You're on the very front end of this, right? So you've been doing it a few months. You've been, taking photography as therapy seriously for a few years, but like in the scope of the lifetime that you've lived so far, it's fractional,
Yeah.
you know? And I think it's one of those things that like if you see it through to the end and continue pushing down that, like from what you've told me, you feel more confident in yourself and you feel more confident in your voice and more assured and steadfast in the feelings that you're having and the trust that you have that it doesn't actually matter if five people disagree with you, because what matters is that the one person that does, that's who gets helped.
Yeah.
Right. And like, that's one of those very like purpose goal setting sort of life moves that positively affects everyone in your sphere, regardless of if it feels like that at the point of initiation or not, you know? I don't know. It's cool. Not to get all like buttery and weird and whatnot, but like, uh, I think it's cool. It's interesting to see folks go like start those paths and start down the positive paths, because I think we have all too many examples of the bad side of that. You know what I mean? And not being able to like have a hook in someone to pull them back out of that bad place, you
Yeah.
know? So being able to kind of see somebody's progression as they've like centered themselves and gone, oh, this is what I need to feel better about life and more fulfilled in life and content in life and this, that, and the other, to go down that positive path, particularly as dudes, because like you've talked about before, right? Like there's not a whole lot of outlets for us to be safe in having emotions outside of like meat. You know, like, meat, beer,
Yeah.
club go smash, burr. You know, like
You know what I
feeling,
realized?
no.
This is why we get no photography conversation done.
But I mean, I can circle that back in if you'd like me to. I'm definitely okay with that mental gymnastic. But like, I think it's cool to see in that regard, especially like I know you've mentioned it before. I don't necessarily know in our conversations directly, but I definitely know that I've heard you mention this before where like even inside of I think the last time we spoke actually, you had mentioned this kind of like imposter syndrome idea, and one day you just kind of said, this is dumb. Like I enjoy doing this. I don't actually give a shit what anybody else thinks about it. I'm going to post this because it gives me joy,
Yeah.
right? It's literally not hurting anybody else. You're not doing negative, you're not having a negative consequence on anybody else's life, on their, their autonomy, their self-determination or anything. And you just kind of made this like you drew a line in the sand, right? And you did it for your own well-being. And I think anybody that's particularly nowadays, anybody that's willing to, God, I sound like a cult hippie. Like, hey, brother, I need you to like self-actualize. Like,
Self-actualize.
uh,
Meditations with Ainsley.
I mean, nothing against like hippies or whatever. I don't know. I've seen too many documentaries at this point. I uh I think it's very important to be open and to be able to like open that door for other people too, to come in and have community in, not even that like, because our photography styles are not the same, right? Like I remember, for example, like one of the first conversations that Dave and I had at that point, like, uh, I hate to say this, but he's gonna back me up on this. That like I associated Leica with street photography,
Okay.
and because he had been pushing so hard from that platform of I'm going to be like a Dave, essentially, that when we first had a conversation, I remember I was just like, yeah, I'm not really a street photographer. So I don't know if we're going to have a whole lot in common, like that sort of thing. Just a real jackass comment in hindsight. But like, he was just sort of like, I mean, I'm not a street photographer either. And I was just like, whatever, dude. Like,
Just brush them off.
shooting a rangefinder, sure you're not. Like,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And look at me now.
But I think that's what's so cool about photography in general is
Yeah.
when you break it all down, whether you shoot, well, not wildlife shooters, but I'm
Who?
kidding. Wildlife.
Oh, wildlife is difficult.
It's easy as shit.
No,
You take a
it's
Z9
difficult.
out and with one of those, it's easy. No, I'm totally playing. The stuff they get is amazing. But you take
You're
any,
going to get somebody real mad that has a 1200 millimeter lens is going to bash you over the head.
if you take down photography in general, no matter what your genre of photography is, you break
Yeah.
it down and it's the same craft.
Mhm.
We all have to learn that little black box that takes a picture. We have to learn the settings. We have to learn, not every set camera. Yes, your exposure triangle, but not every camera works the same way. There's always those little finite things that you need to figure out. So in the end, we're all.
Oh, you mean you're talking about digital cameras right now, right? Sure, I guess you have to learn those things if you shoot digital.
Yes. You're not a real photographer if you shoot digital. That's going to be that's
Sorry,
going to be
children.
that's going to be the headline quote of your episode. Ainsley, it's going to be like a National Enquirer. Ansley Stewart says, "You're not a real photographer if you shoot digital."
The Texan is pretentious. News at 11. No.
I'll have a picture of you with the American flag drinking a Budweiser with your Raptor in the background.
And you got bald eagle behind.
Oh, shit. And yes, folks, this is a photography podcast. No, man.
I promise I'll never say anything bad about maple syrup, though, because I hear Canadians take that like super serious.
That's only because those Canadians are weird. So, funny story. So, we go to meet my sister for the first time. So, it was 40. I guess I was 49 at this time. So, it was last November.
Okay.
Pull up at their house early in the morning. We're on our way down to see my mom and then go pick up my new dog. And we pull in. They have breakfast ready. And we go in, and it's awesome spread. I'm talking like bacon, sausage, pancakes, fresh fruit.
Are we talking
things.
about like bacon, or like bacon that's like ham?
No, that's another fucked up thing. Canadian bacon. It's goddamn ham, man. We call it ham.
Okay.
Only Americans call it Canadian bacon.
I mean, dude, I'm just trying to figure out the cultural differences here. This isn't me trying to be an ass one way or the other. I just never had this conversation before. Like,
Now you have. So we roll in, and my daughter looks at me and my son, and they're like, I think they went and bought this maple syrup because we were coming. It had never been opened, like this fresh bottle. And I was like, I never thought of it. And then on the way home, I was like, you know what? You're probably right.
I heard this was the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. You got any Aunt Jemima?
I think they changed their name.
I think, yeah. And they changed because they were like, it's derogatory. And then you go, that's just it's based on the woman who created it.
There's validity to that. That's a
for
whole deep dive that I would be more than happy to get into. But that man
we'll save that
stereotype thing is definitely bad.
Yes.
And the change that they made is definitely good. I just To be honest, I don't think that I've actually had any syrup in 5 or 6 years or something. So I knew when the controversy came out and kind of went, oh, that's a good point. That is a very racist trope. Good on them for
For
doing that.
sure.
And then living in Texas, like I'm surrounded by, like, oh my God, we're just woke, just libtards. Ew! And like, it's like, I mean, or we have brains and like empathy and can go, you know what? That did suck. Maybe we should do better going forward and move the fuck on with life.
I think we need to change your picture. You're gonna have a fucking Tesla and a Perrier water.
Friend, you have seriously misjudged me.
Oh, too funny.
No. Just as I'm gonna say that this was an asterisk because we're gonna circle back to this real quick. Woo! Um, honestly, one of the ways that I learned the M system the fastest was taking that bitch in my backyard and trying to photograph my chickens. Every single time I get like a new lens or I get like a film stock or any of that kind of stuff, I go in my backyard and I try to photograph my chickens.
Yeah.
Because birds are so jumpy and like, and they're so moving all the time that like, if you can get good at shooting birds with a manual rangefinder, it's Japanese swordsmith.
Yeah, it's game over on that one.
So when people are like, "Oh, I can't focus at f 1.8," I'm like, what? On a building? Like it hasn't moved. What are you talking about? It's right there. And then you start learning like one of the skills that is the funniest to
I can't focus at 1.8 on a building.
One of the
sorry, man, that's funny
that I do, and I've also seen other people do, like that are shooting rangefinders, and I've never heard a word like a name put to it, but I call it the Leica sway. Right? Have you ever seen somebody with a manual rangefinder? They're focused and they're cranked down, and instead of like focusing with the focus, they start just sort of shifting a little bit back and forth like the wind is blowing them.
The personal zoom.
So they find focus and it's like, there it is, right on. That skill, when I first, because understand, like I definitely did that like I did the Q2 to the M body gateway drug pipeline, right?
Gateway drug to Leica.
Yeah.
I've begged everybody for a Leica. Nobody wants to buy me one.
Soon. But you want the Q3, don't you? It
Yeah.
has autofocus. You're cheating.
Oh, well, okay, fine. I'll take an M11. Sorry.
M11P.
There you go.
You need the fancy one without the dot.
I don't need a fancy one.
But no, I think it's interesting. That was one of those skills that I remember the first day that I did it, and I didn't know that I was doing it at first, but I was just like trying to get the focus in. And I had never used a manual rangefinder of any sort before. So I was just sort of like, oh, I mean, I got to learn this now. Right. And the experience from the Q with the like rangefinder style EVF was so different from what an actual like rangefinder, manual rangefinder is. When I started learning it, I got hooked.
I'm going to start looking for the Leica sway every time I go out now. Oh, Leica? I heard all dentists do this.
Don't call it the Leica sway, because then there's going to be a bunch of threads about like, oh, they think that they have their own movements now. Don't they know that humans just move like that? Oh, they're going to have a red dot like on their hand while they're swaying. Stupid Leica turds. Like, I don't Just
I'm doing it. I'm fully going to say, hey, I was out with all these Leica turds. And have you ever seen them do the Leica sway? It's like the
y'all
secret.
are all worried about red dots, and all you are is a big brown stain on society. Like,
Holy shit. We love Leica. Don't worry.
but no, I do think it's funny because it's like, it's that you've heard people have talked about that a lot on your podcast, the experience of how they shoot and why they choose certain systems and stuff.
Yeah.
And man, if there's a universal truth that I would agree with, like that experience of learning how to shoot a manual rangefinder, it doesn't have to be a Leica, but they're just the easiest seemingly to like get current production of. It changed the way my eye looked at stuff. It changed the way I approached scenes. I will say the only like annoying thing about it is shooting through like a fence, right? Because there's that, I think it's called parallax shift, that when you're focusing, the viewfinder, like the focusing box will shift in the viewfinder to correct for that parallax thing. But because, like, say you're shooting through like a chain link fence, right? You've got the viewfinder where you think that it's supposed to be, but that's not where the lens is. And so you'll have to do this thing where you like put the lens in the right hole and then look through the viewfinder, and there's just like a big chain link through the middle of it. And you're like, no, I know that it's right. Like, just faith, just vibes.
Is that called like, the Leica sway?
No.
Or is that the Leica shift? The Leica twist.
I think that's the version of spray and pray. for manual rangefinders.
I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of blown out. That's shit. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
I shot wildlife. So,
dude, that's a crazy looking owl. It looks like a baboon's ass.
It's called the Great Gray. So it's big. This is what it looks like.
How big are they?
There you go.
That's a cool looking bird.
Yeah, so he's like 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet tall.
Okay.
Very rare where I live, and this was 10 minutes from my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and then I shot wildlife was where I went to when I first started. And then there's like, I don't know if you've ever seen a Grinch owl.
Oh, no, but I want to more. Look at that face.
Yeah.
It's like Grumpy Cat, but like owl.
He was not impressed with me.
Dude, owls.
Yeah, I love owls. I have so many. Like there's a barred owl close up. I have pictures of them ripping other animals apart. Great
Back
horned.
in middle school, we had to dissect owl pellets.
Yeah. Awesome, eh? So I shot wildlife before anybody wants to rip me apart. My ADHD doesn't allow me to stand there and look. Okay, well, if we sit here for 4 hours, we might see something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know how we're going to get ourselves back to photography now. I always talked about my own personal relationship problems with Dr. Ansley.
Dr. Ansley. Whoops.
Yeah. No, it's the same.
Hey, man, I was just trying to bring a conversation in. I don't know. I'm not a medical professional by any means. Please do not come for me.
He'll be the Dr. Phil of our show, just like he was to Oprah.
Oh, man. I had a friend that went on Dr. Phil. Well, I don't know if I would call them a friend at this point, but like, it was weird enough for them that they hid that fact forever until some rando posted a screenshot to their Facebook, and they were like, "Is that you on Dr. Phil?" And we were all like, whoa, what was he like in person? And I've never heard a positive thing about that dude
Yeah.
in person. Like the way he treats guests and everything. Like even from what's her name? Cash Me Outside chick. Danielle Bergoli. Is that her name?
I know who you mean. I do not know her name.
She, whatever anybody thinks about her and the way that she acted or whatever, like there was a big thing, like she called out Dr. Phil and essentially his entire production crew for sending those troubled youth to like these really abusive uh like correction camps. I don't know if that's the right word for it or whatever, as part of that show. And just really crappy abusive shit from it.
Yeah.
Like the way that those counselors and stuff treated the guests, reprehensible.
Yeah.
Uh,
Man, this is gonna get pulled every way. They're gonna be like, "Did you just have a Dr. Phil reference?" Yes. Canceled. Don't you know who he is? He lives in Texas.
I don't think so.
I'm just messing with you.
Oh. Anyways, no, I mean we can steer the ship back into photography bay.
I think we're gonna head that way.
The winds of change, they are a blowing.
We'll go on a 5-day photo trip and take photos one day because we're too busy quoting stupid ass movies.
Dude, I know you'd mentioned that. I told you had mentioned that to Brian on the podcast that y'all did together about you going down to, I guess, Seattle or Portland or whatever.
Yeah.
I told Brian, I was like, I think the way that should go, if we could make that happen, is like we need to get like a West Coast crew together when you make that trip down, and then just do like a sweeping road trip down the West Coast with
That would
like
be sick.
4 or 5 of us,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, so like Dave and Brian and I mean maybe fucking Dave could get Aish in on it. And just like Leicas and Hasselblads and Nikons, oh my, like, and just sweep down.
And I'll be the only one without a
coast. I think that
Leica.
would be pretty rad.
That would
But
be
no,
awesome.
Because I've still never been North California. I think the farthest north in California that I've been so far is Lone Pine, like the Alabama Hills area. Um, there's all those spots that, Big Sur and Morro Bay and I guess Cannon Beach and all that stuff that you see kind of everywhere. But there's also the desert side of Oregon
Yep. Around Bend.
that I'm like super interested in because that playa out there is massive and radical as shit. And like, and me in deserts.
Wah, wah.
Dreary desert daddy at your service. Like,
Oh, dang. We got the Dreary Desert Daddy. Maybe that's going to be your tag.
oh, you haven't seen the inside joke, huh?
No.
I don't know. This is like several months back. I was making a like tongue in cheek, I was just being an asshole on Instagram, but it was like, I mean, there's like Portrait Poppy and like Analog Astronaut and all this stuff. I was like, I should call myself like Dreary Desert Daddy. Like, I think because nobody gives a shit about the desert stuff that I'm posting other than myself because
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you might as well shoot black and white because everything that you're taking pictures of is monotone anyways, dick. Like, just grainy and dry and crusty. And I mean, isn't it hot? Like, It's all dusty and grumming up the camera. Like,
You should set up for a shot and you should be like, oh, this portrait, and pull it out and throw it. And be like, Cinestill, here you are.
no, absolutely not. You know, I don't have an opinion on that whole like cease and desist thing. It is what it is. Like companies are gonna company because we live in a world where it makes sense for them to chase whatever little sliver of a profit margin they trying to get, whatever. I don't care. I will say that I guess I shot two rolls of 800, like Cinestill 800T now, one in 120 and then one in 35. It's just not my favorite thing. Like, it's cool for the neon lights, but I almost kind of feel like for what I was hoping to see out of it, the expired cinema films do that look better for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know? Um,
I
and
just like to bug you about Cinestill. I know it's your favorite and you're just embarrassed to
fine.
tell people.
But also substantially less expensive, you know?
How dare you worry about less expensive? I mean, come on. It's only the best.
Excuse me. We all have to be financially conscious here.
What's
Especially
that?
when I'm learning film. I mean, there's definitely that side of it that's just like, just get used to it because you're going to mess up all kinds of film and just piss money away. Just like, just burning it. You might as
Yeah.
well wipe your ass with those rolls because they're going right down the toilet, friend. Like, I feel bad because I like took my first roll of 800T to like a really good friend's birthday party. I was like, this is what I'm going to shoot here today because like we're going to be inside and there's tungsten lights, I guess. Like, you know, that sort of thing. There's like two photos from that roll that are even kind of passable. And like they keep on asking me like, "Hey, did you get the?" And I'm just like, I haven't worked on it yet. But we see you posting. Yeah, I just haven't gotten to that roll yet. I don't like they didn't ask me to do it leading up to it, but now that I like committed myself, it's just like ah. And I just so happened to do it with that roll of film because of course I would, you know. But
I took my old Minolta XGM, HP5 in it, and went to a wedding. And I was like, oh, this is great. No, it wasn't great. It was actually very stressful. And then they saw the camera, so they were like, when did we get to see them?
never.
I lost the roll.
If you saw me with a camera, no, you didn't.
Yeah. You're lying.
Yeah. Like Mandela effect or whatever. Like, oh, you thought I was a photographer? No. I'm a stenographer.
Right?
That's what I do.
And the fruit
I
of
definitely saw you with a camera. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
And the Fruit of the Loom logo did have a cornucopia on it.
See, that would be a good sponsor to get. Fruit of the Loom.
Yeah.
Like my entire like from the time that I was like 17 years old until I was probably like 34 or something. If I could have gotten a Fruit of the Loom sponsor at that point, I would have been in a much better financial position. Because like the amount of Fruit of the Loom black t-shirts that I had back then for like the band and all that kind of stuff boggles the mind. Like I would just buy them at Walmart because they were only like $3 or something.
Yeah.
So I would go to Walmart like, I don't know, once a quarter and spend like $50 on the same shirt and wear them until they were like stretched and like faded and stuff.
And then they had the
just put them in
see-through
a garbage
sections.
bag and like right off to Salvation Army by the bag full. Like I was a uniform company or something. You know what I mean? But the band always joked about that. It's like, I don't give a shit about guitars. We're set with guitars. We're set with amps. We're set with musical gear. if Fruit of the Loom could get on board, yes. Like,
I gotta reach out to them.
not anymore.
Come on, Fruit of the Loom, sponsor the podcast.
I think they changed because the last time I bought one of the shirts, it didn't have that same love and feeling anymore, so to speak. I don't I don't know if it's getting older or like greedflation hit through the loom and they took an apple out of the basket or something, but like
They took the cornucopia away.
no more bananas for you. No, man. I don't know, dude. Like, I'm curious. So you just got rid of, you ditched the 50R, right? The GFX, and you went to the XT.
Yeah.
Now that you've been shooting, it's the XT4?
5.
5?
Yeah.
Now that you've been shooting that for a little while now, are you missing the GFX or do you feel, has it changed the way that you've shot now?
Not really. I mean, I was always an X shooter, so the GFX was a very short period of my life.
Okay.
And I did it for practical reasons to have that hybrid capability. Because if you ever tried to shoot video on a GFX 50R, you might as well have a freaking rock and a chisel and a hammer and hammer out the picture because that's what it looked like.
Just shoot video on your iPhone at that point.
Right?
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
But I was just wanted to have a hybrid option, and now I shoot all my video on my iPhone, but that's just another story. Do I miss the dynamic range of the GFX? But the 40 megapixel sensor in the XT5 isn't far behind.
Really?
I enjoy the images. I enjoy the fact it's a smaller body. It's pretty much glued with the 16 1.4 on it. So it's like a 24 mil. Yeah, it's good. I wish I shot more, but right now with the podcast, I'm just so busy with it that I don't get out as much as I should.
I was gonna say, have you tried? I'm sure you've seen that dude's account, Beware My Fuji.
I reached out to Tom already. I was like, I want to talk to you.
Oh, that's his name?
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
We've chatted.
I was gonna say, have
Instagram.
you tried any of that crazy like double and triple exposure stuff with the XT5 yet?
No. I bought a 4mm a while before the GFX, so because he had the 4mm and he was doing all this crazy shit, and I kept watching how he did it, and I was like, I still don't get it.
I tried it with the GFX. Like I stumbled across that dude's account, and my chest was bruised from my jaw hitting it. Right? I was just like, how the fuck are you doing that? Yeah. And like deep dove on his Instagram and just like straight up love Bob. I'm like, oh my God, I am so stoked that I found this account. I just spent an hour and a half going down. I think I understand how you're doing it. And I came in here and I got like like my GFX, and I charged the stupid non-charging batteries and like got into the menu system. I still can't figure out, and I mean, I'm not going to at this point, but like, because I, sold my GFX off too, but the stuff that he does in between the captures, like I understand how he's doing the different captures, but what's really cool to me about his technique is how in between those frames, he's changing where the color points and shit are.
Yeah.
Like on the little graph. Bro, what? And he must have like baseball mitt-sized hands as well, because he's just manhandling the thing with like this foot-long thumb, just sort of like just like a banana. Like just joysticking around and shit, like flopping colors and all crazy into the corner. Oh, dude, that dude's so wild. Like, that's all to say, I really hope you try that, because I never was able to like wrap my head around it too much. And now that you've got like the XT5, that's what I want to see you learn how to do. Just for my own like selfish reasons.
You want to see me go mentally insane trying to figure it out? Do I have to film myself while I'm learning it too?
No, I don't want you to go nuts doing it. I want you to learn how to do it and then like be stoked on it, because the stuff that dude's do, like I I've tried doing multiple exposures on film at this point and I'm done.
Yeah.
Like just nope, not right now. My little tiny pea-sized brain cannot wrap its manner around that, especially like on the M6. Like I've seen people kind of like hack multiple exposures on it, but it's this thing where you're like, you take a photo, and then how do you do it? You take the photo, you rack, because you still have to cock the shutter. So you have to rack the shutter, but you have to watch the film winding thing to know how far it spun, and then click it into the rewind thing, and then like manually rewind the film to where you think that it was before you cock the shutter, and then take the photo. No, it doesn't work that well.
I'm gonna be up till 3 a.m. studying Beware My Fuji, going, oh yeah, fully understand what he's doing.
It's a really cool effect, and the manner of which he utilizes it is every time. He's one of those dudes that like, or he's one of those photographers, those creatives that has such a unique, specific voice that is the images that he makes, right? That I don't actually need to see his account name or anything, as I'm like, he's one of those accounts that like, as I'm doom scrolling,
yeah,
and a new post, I'm just like, oh, there it is. I know it's you. I'm just glued.
Yeah. I like how
I mean?
he's willing to show the technique.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to hide it. He's like, no, this is how I did it. And he's just like,
right.
And you're like, I'm lost 15 steps ago, but
right.
Thank you.
But it's just really cool. And I think that that's one of those things that embodies that idea of like, he's not gatekeeping this technique. He's opening these doors for people. It's like he figured out this really cool way of doing it. I'm sure he's not like the only one that has ever done it, but I mean, maybe he is. I don't actually know. I'm speaking all out of my ass here, sitting down. But the way that he's utilized it and like really honed in on that skill is just, it's cool. You need to learn your version of it.
Everybody will look like an alien.
But that would be cool. I mean, like I never got Blue Dog. I don't understand that whole like thing. Making people look like aliens with multiple exposures from a Beware My Fuji style shoot would be tight.
Lit by Hobolite.
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to gatekeep that part of my process, please. Thanks. The angle at which I hit the shutter release with proprietary.
Yeah.
Thank you. No.
It's the big censored logo.
Oh yeah, because you're gonna start doing video too, huh? Like on the podcast stuff.
What if we were to do an on location podcast? Get helicoptered to the top of the Rocky Mountains and do it live from the, like, not live, but recorded, but on the peaks of the Rocky Mountains. And he's like, I know people have helicopters. I was like, are you kidding me right now?
You're like jumping right to the McKinnon way.
Hey, you know what? There's only one way to the top when you got to rock and roll. But it would just...
You got to rock and roll?
Yeah, like... You heard that? You heard me drop that in there? I have zero musical ability, so, I just got to throw a music quote in every... I watch School of Rock, okay?
I never have.
You're missing out. Jack Black is a genius.
Oh, yeah, no. Jack Black, yes. Tenacious D and The Pick of Destiny, 100%. Like, I've just never seen School of Rock.
I would love I feel like if I reached out to him, he would do it. There's something
Probably,
about
if
him.
the dude had time, he seems like one of the most genuine human beings on this planet at this point. Then you hit the big time and you alienate everybody.
Fuck that. I love this shit, man. I love, like,
I'm just fucking with you, dude. Like,
no, think about it though. Like, if I didn't see your stuff through Dave, and I didn't go, dude, I want to talk to you.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have had the friendship that we've been able to build. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
sure,
right? It helps that we've recorded 17 hours of the podcast and not talked about photography once.
That's not true. We talked about it a little bit. That's just because you haven't asked me questions about photography. Like you've deliberately asked other people while looking at their photos things about them, and you have not done that with me. Like you tried starting off that way on the first episode of this.
You threw a fucking Dewey Cox reference out. It changes everything. You don't want this. And then we laughed for 7 hours.
Honestly, it would be way easier if you just asked me questions about photography, because that stuff I could just nerd out down the little rabbit hole and go off on all kinds of vectors that would make people be like, what in the fuck is going on in his mind? And I can't answer that question because I don't know either. Like, I don't know. I'm just seeing stuff. I'm legitimately trying to wrangle photons. That's it. That's all I want to do.
You're trying to wrangle photons.
Yes.
See, you say shit like that. Now, how are we supposed to take it seriously? You're like a space alien.
No, I'm a Texan. I mean, I would say lasso, but like, I don't know.
I'm pulling up your stuff now, just so I can ask you questions on photos.
Now you're gonna do it.
Yep,
I put you on the spot.
All jealous and shit, all needy. Here we go.
Needy.
Right now it says
that's insulting.
There's no Ansley Stewarts to be found.
There's no Ansley Stewarts.
I forgot the.
I feel like you just keep on misspelling my name.
Probably.
And you're secretly spelling my name as Ashley and just not admitting it to me.
Well, I typed in apricot by mistake.
Asshole Stewart. Oh, no. It was Ansley.
Oh, you came up. You're the first one.
Extra credit if you ever find my my film only account that I have told no one about.
Oh.
It exists. There are only 2 posts on it.
Okay. Does it have the same stern face photo as your other profile?
Nope.
Oh.
100% jacked a screenshot out of Dave's video.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, huh? Good luck.
I'll find it.
You recognize me by my back fat.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, fuck. So, the Stewart film account nobody knows about.
Okay, dreary desert daddy, I have questions for thee.
How is it that my computer just says that I'm not following you?
Oh.
That's weird. We talk all the time.
Are you not following me? Did you hit a wrong button? Did I offend you?
You might have. I'm sensitive. I'm a libtard. Remember?
Oh, from the podcast account. I see. No, you did not follow me there, but now you do. Look at that. +1.
You got another one.
Yay.
All right, so let's jump right into Thursday, where we talked about something about a UI UX feels very clunky to me. I'm not the largest fan of C1.
Oh, I thought technically we covered that at the beginning of this episode. See,
I know. I'm just
you just don't remember that we spoke about photography.
We did. When did we talk about photography? Oh, right here it says, oh yeah, you took one of Roy's and you used a Nikon Z6 too. I didn't know that was a film. I didn't know that was a film camera.
It's pretty insulting.
It's been a long day. Okay.
No. See, here's this is what happened. Okay. I saw a bird on top of the Roy's sign, and a Nikon is the only camera that I can use for wildlife, so I had to do it. And by the time the autofocus caught up, it was nighttime.
Wow. All the Nikon orders are gonna freaking chase us down.
Pitchfork us or me.
Did it hurt to admit that you shot this in one of these in Cinestill?
No, no, it didn't because the photo came out.
Dude,
Although,
the photo's
you know, the
incredible.
big thing that about all those photos that actually sucked a whole lot is I I forgot. So when I was shooting the slide film, right, for the panosprockets, I had one of the 812 warming filters on, and I also had a like quarter pro mist,
Okay.
right, on there to kind of exacerbate the halation. But if you notice in those photos of the nighttime stuff, there's something weird that happened with the interplay of the stacked filters, where if you look, it's almost like a mirrored reflection of the Roy's sign in legitimately like the equal and opposite direction of the Roy's sign.
Yeah.
And it's on all of the photos
Really?
from that night.
That's
And
weird.
not all of them had the 812 filter on. So I don't actually know what the hell happened. Like, I've never seen that before with that sort of setup. And it happened on both the Mamiya, and it happened on the M6 as well. Really annoying.
Yeah, I can
I got
imagine.
that back. Uh it's like I was able to kind of Photoshop some of it out and like make it a little bit better,
Yeah.
but then I felt guilty because I was editing my film photo too much. So I erased all of those cloning layers and just kind of ran with it.
It is your photo. You can do whatever you want with it.
That's not what the internet says.
Oh, fuck the internet. I mean, I'm kidding. You can tell it's getting late and I've been up way too long. I love the reflection shot though, with the Roy sign in the background, like just on the window. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I think so. Is it one of the ones where it's like looking into the couch section? Oh, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I will tell you. Have you ever been down there?
I have not. It's high on my list.
Okay. So that was my first time there ever. And at night, what's I kind of mentioned this like in the blurb along with that photo, but what was that day I went to Newberry Springs and then I went to Roy's, right? Because Roy's is there on Route 66 and so is Newberry Springs. But a lot of people, I guess, don't really know about Newberry Springs. I didn't until maybe 6 months ago or something.
I've got no idea what that is.
Newberry Springs is this like little desert town, but what's cool about it, well, cool is a bad word. What's signature about it is that there was essentially a neighborhood built in the riverbed of the Mojave River, right? And everybody that had a house there eventually learned what a bad idea to have a house in a riverbed in the desert is, right? And like, but to their credit, the county, the state approved the building. Like they approved the permits to construct it, right? So when people's essentially the houses started like getting overrun with sand, right? Kind of like there's that in the desert in, I think it's Namibia, where the houses are like buried with sand and photographers go out there a lot to do that kind of photography. Same sort of thing happened there in Newberry Springs. And I think the last person, the last holdout, didn't actually leave until like the early 2000s or like late 90s or something. Anyways, they tried to like sue the county, essentially saying, "Hey, you shouldn't have let us build houses there. How dumb are you?" Right? Um, but what's interesting about that place is that those all of those homesteads are still there, right? And because it is still an active riverbed, essentially, but it's a riverbed in the desert, so it doesn't always have water in it, right? Those houses and all of the structures and all the stuff that's out there, like buries itself and then unburies itself constantly over and over and over again. So sometimes you'll go out there and like all of the houses are only like halfway covered, right? When I went out there from the photo, like there's a couple of those photos that are Portrait 800 or whatever, where there's just like a chimney sticking out. That's there, right? But it's a really disorienting place because there isn't like a sign or anything that tells you like here's where the decrepit houses are. So you just kind of like follow a road until it ends and turns into sand. And there's like signs out there from the county that are shot full of bullet holes that are like, the county does not maintain this. You are driving on this road at your own risk. Oh, okay. Right. It's very like hills have eyes, sort of like, uh-oh out there.
Okay.
Anywho, it was an interesting place to me, but going out there by myself and understanding how quickly the light goes away, that's one of those places that needs to be explored over and over and over and over again. So if we do the big road trip with all of the West Coast people,
Yeah.
we all need to go to Newberry Springs.
Well, I think we need to put everybody into a group chat and start trying to figure that out, because I think that shit would be cool. Sick. I'm transitioning away from street photography, wanting to shoot more landscapes. So,
I mean, technically, you are kind of shooting street photography out there. The streets are just under the sand.
Okay, so it's okay. I can go there.
It's a hybrid, yeah. It's like shooting video and then taking screenshots out of it for photos. It's fine. So Newberry Springs it's out there on Route 66, and essentially like from where I was staying, Newberry Springs was 3.5 hours away or something. And so I knew that Roy's was only about half an hour away from Newberry Springs or whatever. So I essentially used up all the light at Newberry Springs. And then I was like, screw it, going to Roy's, right? And tried to haul ass out there because they close at like 9 o'clock or something. And they turn those lights off at that point too. But what was really cool about Roy's, for the longest time, Roy's was in like a state of disrepair. Essentially, like all the neon was broken and like they didn't put any effort into the place. And a new dude, I don't know if he bought all of Amboy or if he just bought Roy's, but I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. But this new owner has essentially like put a whole lot of time and money into reviving that entire thing. So all the neon is new now, right? I think they're even talking about like reviving all the little motel rooms that used to be there as well. Anyways, it's really neat when you are out there at dark on that stretch of road because it's really dark, right? And it splits off from the main highway. So you're kind of on this like 2-lane, like blacktop access road, essentially, which is the old Route 66. But it's so dark out there. And so what you see at first when you're traveling is you see this like little glint off in the distance, and it almost looks like the headlights from an oncoming car. And then you realize, oh no, that's the Roy's sign. and you're still like 10 miles away or something. Like the scale of that sign and how impressive it is, no photos do justice of.
Really?
Like it's really incredible. And it just keeps on getting like crazier and crazier the closer that you get. So you start getting all like bubbly, like butterflies in your stomach because you're like, oh yes, I'm almost there. Woo! You know, like like a Pillsbury Doughboy or whatever. Like, woo! uh, uh, but I was fortunate because the way that I timed it was bad, but it ended up being good because I only had, I guess, about 15-20 minutes or something to actually photograph it because they were closing down. Um, but I believe her name is Nicole. She's like one of the people that always has, she's one of the employees there, right? Keeps the place open and all that kind of stuff. Um, she was nice enough, like she kind of saw me out there like bumbling around, like taking photos and stuff. And she kind of just gave me a heads up. She's like, hey, I'm gonna, I've got to close down in like 15 minutes or whatever. And I was like, no, no, that's cool. I'll be done by then. But I walked up on the building because it's separated into a couple of different structures. But that the window thing where the couches are, I don't think that I don't know this for a fact, but from what I gathered, they have that almost like a little living museum, right? So people don't go in there, right? The from what you're seeing is this kind of like stasis exhibit of this is what Roy's was like in the 40s or 50s or whatever, right? So there's little suitcases and there's like a painting of the original owners of Roy's, like Roy and his wife and stuff in there. But she was nice enough to let me turn the lights off of the sign that night. Like she invited me inside to turn the lights off. And it was wild because she opens the door and I'm sure you've been in the like grandparents' house and stuff. Like it smells like that weird kind of like, is it mold? Is it mothballs? Like you don't actually know, right? But you're hit with that like, I don't want to call it nostalgic smell, but to me it is because I
Yeah.
was around like my grandparents and stuff so much. That's what hit me. And so I was like, hey, I need to get a couple of photos. Like I have this idea, right? So I like ran outside and that's when I started taking pictures of the couch and stuff because that smell made me think of the room in my grandparents' house that always had plastic on the furniture, right?
I
Like
know
that
that
sort of
smell.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I was like, no, no, I got to get these photos. Like, and that place has been photographed so much, but that angle I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
Having the sign in the reflection of the window.
that was really difficult.
I bet.
Like that, especially I tried it on film and it didn't come out all that great, but like, because I think the photos that you're looking at, I'm pretty sure those are the M11. Um, yeah, those are definitely
Doesn't
the
say
M11.
so.
No, it's the M11 because I edited those photos like on Lightroom Mobile. uh, but I remember like kind of looking at just kind of looking at it and getting that feeling of like, oh yeah, totally. That is actually what I remember seeing. And I was really psyched to edit those and post them. I kind of regret a couple of them now because I don't think that there's continuity between the colors of all of them. So there's like a little bit of shifty thing that I'm like, about. But one thing that's really cool about Roy's and I guess Nicole and like they always repost photographers when any photographer takes a photo of Roy's, they're in the comments, they like it, they'll share it on their story. Like they're very supportive of photographers coming out there and hanging out and stuff too. Um, it's a really cool place. It was interesting because I've seen that place so much, right? And for such a long time that to get to kind of experience it with nobody else there other than the employee or whatever, and then her being gracious enough to just kind of be like, hey, you want to turn off the lights? Like, fuck yes, I do. Absolutely.
How cool is that?
Uh it was just really cool. And like, I don't know, that's one of the things that I love about those desert areas, right? Is that at night it's dangerous because there's nobody out there. So like if something happens to you, best of luck. But there's this like, there's a railroad that runs parallel to Route 66 right there. And that night, because of the storms that came through, the road out of California, like that part of Route 66 that was after Roy's going into Nevada, had been closed down because of storm damage. Like I guess the road got washed out or whatever. So there was no incoming traffic. So it was just dead still. And the desert was quiet and there was no wind. And you kind of have this like this experience visiting this like world renowned landmark, right? And you kind of had it to yourself and you could hear like crickets and all this like, but and then off in the distance, you heard the freight train like coming down I don't know, dude. It was one of those little experiences that I was like, you just kind of had to like take it in. And even when I was like driving back to where I was going to stay or whatever, I had no music on. I just rolled the windows down and just kind of enjoyed that like that desert calmness, right? Um, man, I don't know. That like dude, I don't know. For me, that's one of those things that like it puts me in a real good place uh creatively and mentally and stuff. I'm definitely not the starving artist like, oh, good art comes from struggle. Like, that's not how my depression works.
Yeah.
Like when I get down on something and I get bummed, I don't want to do anything. I don't feel creative because I'm not creating from a place of uh of dark, I guess. Right? Um the images and like the moments that I want to capture are those moments and stuff where I felt most grounded to being a person, I
Yeah.
think. Um and being able to experience, and I'm really new on this journey, right? Like I've been doing photography for a while. I've been published in magazines with like I had a cover of a magazine and I've been published in LA Weekly and uh there's a couple of photos that I did for a drummer friend of mine that was on the Sabian website because he was an endorsee. So like most of the stuff that I got published for or whatever was like band related, music related photography. And I've always had my photography as a work tool for all of like real estate marketing, listing, all of that sort of like content that I have to produce in that manner, right? None of that stuff really ever like brought any sort of like vibe of being happy or joy or like there's not a whole lot of creative juice that gets flowing when I'm like, oh yeah, I need to take photos for a listing, right? Because I always want to be really honest about the property that's being sold. I don't want to like HDR the shit out of it. And then somebody comes in, it's like that wall's not that color. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So there's really no like creative freedom in there, I feel like. And that part of it can be very like kind of draining. But when I started figuring out this side of photography of like chasing down those moments that make you feel most grounded as a person on the right path, calm, fulfilled. It's not even like the photos are a part of it. It's cool to have them, but man, I remember so much about those like those real specific moments, you know? Um, I don't know. I'm really thankful to Nicole and Roy's for to like putting that cherry on top that night.
Yeah,
But that
definitely.
I'll tell you, dude, like that whole I think I mentioned this before. I've never done anything of that nature before, right? Like that whole trip was very off the cuff and spontaneous because it was like, well, how often do I get the opportunity to like create art with like-minded individuals, but they're also strangers?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I want to see how this like affects like what cool comes out of this. And it turns out a lot, weirdly enough,
Yep.
because my like renegade lone wolf ass has been like real like, oh, I'll travel by myself. It's more fulfilling that way. And I was wrong, like real wrong. Um, because being around those guys, it was really cool because it was inspiring to kind of see how they worked and the way that they looked at stuff. Even kind of some of those photos that I've been posting, like I haven't posted everything yet because I'm still working my way through a lot of those files, but we have similar eyes for certain things, but you can kind of see like I know that Lucas's take on Joshua Tree was Lucas's. I know that Dave's take on Joshua Tree was Dave's. And I know and I would almost imagine that they would be able to see my take on Joshua Tree as mine, right? We're all using the same film stocks and same cameras and the same lenses and all that, standing in the same place at the same time and all that kind of stuff. But all of our perception of those little moments are slightly different and very individual unto themselves. Um, and it's a really cool, inspiring feeling to kind of be in that presence of creatives that are, there's no bad feelings there. Like nobody's being shitty to each other. We're all kind of like laughing and, trying to figure out what inside joke are we going to have as buddies, like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And trying to figure out like where triggers are and where not, like boundaries are and stuff like that. Um, and you get to know people that, for all intent and purpose, are 100% strangers. But the more you meet folks, and I'm sure you've experienced this on the podcast too, the more you meet new people and you start talking to people, it starts to open up how many shared commonalities we all have, kind of like how we all sort of like trickled down these paths to the same lake, so to speak, or whatever. Um, Anyways, I know that went off on a tangent, but that's the story of Roy's.
That was a pretty cool story. I mean, they
But no, I
definitely,
actually like I want to go back there a lot because there's some shots from that night that I saw, but I didn't have the time to pull off. And they're all involving not the sign itself, but views of that interior stuff.
yeah.
Because it's just like it's one of those little pieces that nobody really ever focuses on, or at least I haven't seen it. And to me, it brings me back to this very like visceral memory core of growing up, of like kind of danky, smelly, weird, like there you just figure that there's like a bowl with a bunch of hard candy all stuck together, like, you know, like 5 feet away from where you're standing or whatever. Yeah. Uh, like that sort of vibe. And also a place that, if I understand the history right, like they've been around for a century. Like Roy's, if I understand it right, I'm pretty sure they opened up in like the very early 1900s or like late 1800s or something, in part because of that railroad, like the rail line that was there. But also then, like when Route 66 became like, the Great American Getaway and stuff, they're kind of this like beacon that evolves along with the landscape and the time frames and all that kind of stuff. Um, I don't know. It's interesting to visit places like that. It's even more interesting to kind of like, I guess, put your fingerprint on the place itself, with, taking an image of a place that's been imaged a million times. Like I'm pretty sure Cindy Crawford did a photo shoot out there recently too and stuff. Like people are always doing like music videos out there or like at the gas station and stuff. It's just, I don't know, neat place. But so is Newberry Springs. There are so many of those like little like unique places that are off the beaten path, kind of. Um, like I definitely have a desire. I have an interest in seeing and photographing like the big places, like the national parks and the Yosemites and that kind of stuff. Um, but I have this really great interest in, and this is by no means unique, of kind of remembering the forgotten spaces that, you know, once the gold dried up, the people left and the state forgot about this place. And the people that didn't leave, the state didn't give a shit about anymore. Right. Um, like there's a little town called Darwin. Have you ever heard of Darwin, California? There's a documentary about it, right? It's this little, like, it's a town and it's situated between 395, like Highway 395 and Death Valley National Park. Um, if it not for that documentary, I would have never known that Darwin existed, you know? Um, those little places, and for better or for worse, there's a lot of history that we either don't focus on or have forgotten the implication thereof that exists out there. Like Manzanar is there near Lone Pine as well. So you see like the movie Road, right, at Alabama Hills, and you'll see like Mount Whitney and Lone Pine Peak, and you'll see pictures of Lone Pine. And every once in a while, you'll see photos of Manzanar, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with what Manzanar was, but it was one of the internment camps for like Japanese citizens of the US back in World War II, and a really brutal one at that, right? Um, again, not for a good, interesting, like not when I say interesting, I don't want to like make it out like it's a tourist attraction or whatever. But I think those places are important because they ground you back to understanding to try to be better as well as a person. Um, and I think that's another one of the reasons why like photography is really important to myself, at least, right? Um, because the more we kind of forget about those places, it's that idea of we kind of maybe forget and start leading ourselves down a path where we're going to repeat really bad history, you know? Um,
It's always good to
but
remember those places too, because they all tell a story. It's all part of the
right.
journey, right? And to remember history. I love shooting old farmhouses and old
Hmm.
dilapidated barns. And I
Yeah.
always look at them as I shoot them, and I'm not someone who sets up a tripod and takes my time. I see what I want to shoot. I shoot it and I move on. And that's just how I've
Hmm.
always done it. Probably because I can't focus longer than 5 seconds. I always wonder, those walls could tell stories. Those walls will tell good. They'll tell bad. Tell atrocious acts of violence. They'll
Yes.
tell, they'll tell everything. And
100%.
you can capture that in an image. And people don't understand what
100%.
I mean by that, but you can capture sorrow on a wall in a building because the whole building tells a story of what happened.
Yep. 100%. I will tell you, that is one of the things that was most striking to me about Newberry Springs, about that neighborhood, because there's still remnants. Like, obviously, the houses are still out there, right? But it's a very big area. It's kind of almost deceiving how large it is because you get used to like the size of a city block or like a residential block or whatever. And what what's not really apparent when I was kind of researching the area and trying to figure out like because I'm looking at like Google Maps and kind of going, well, I know that there's houses out here, but where in the fuck are they? Like that sort of thing, right? And all you see is like like sand waves, right? But if you know what you're looking for, you'll see like these little remnants in the Google Earth things of like a fence line in the sand, right? And so, as it would, because, geography, topography, as you're going out the paved road is still out there, but it starts on a decline down into the riverbed, and then all of a sudden the pavement just and it's gone and it's just sand waves, right? And big like sand dune banks and stuff that are always changing and shaping becomes very disorienting because all of it is just like repeating patterns out there. Uh but it's like I think if I remember right, it's something like 2 square miles, right? That was essentially re-overtaken. And there's like 7 or 8 homesteads out there that were really affected by this. So you kind of like start walking out there and it's sand. So that sucks because it's dry sand. So you're just like fighting camera gear and stuff. And like, but there's also military bases around. So like, there's this shot that I have on video of buried house, 3/4 of the way up the wall, chimney. Looking down, I am standing on the top of a fence. So the sand is what, 8, 9 feet deep or something, because all I see is the little cap of the fence post or whatever. And there's like an Apache flying off in the distance. Just real low and loud. You know what I mean? Um, and I kept on wondering, like, I'm out there by myself and I'm out there like exploring this area, but I knew a little bit about the history and the struggle that went on and how long those homesteaders held on, right? Because they didn't have a better place to go. And again, the state kind of went, well, whoops. You know what I mean? I know that this is going to sound like I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel for like an analogy here, but I kind of almost feel like it's the same sort of thing. Like going out there and experiencing those kind of places, you guard against being a boomer that gets mad because all of a sudden you realize that Rage Against the Machine is political. It's like, what machine do you think we were raging against this whole time? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that sort of context to very real struggles of our fellow people that really do like figuratively and literally get washed under the sand, you know? Um, it's almost like its own liminal space. That's probably like one way to put it. Uh, because I'm pretty good with directions, like and orienting myself and stuff. But man, I made the mistake of like being out there for 15 minutes too long. So the sun went and I did a really a thorough job of tracing my path of how I got in there. And once the sun went away, whoops, I had no idea where the hell the road was, like how to get out of there. It took me a good 10 minutes of me like bumbling around in the dark, trying to figure out like, oh yeah. I drove around that scrub brush, you know? Um, but the photos that I got out there were really neat to me. And I know that sounds kind of insensitive because of, everything leading up to that. But it's definitely one of those places that I want to revisit a bunch of times. And I would like to, the original plan was that I was trying to pester Dave when we were hanging out. Like we would go, like the original plan was we were going to go and meet up with Lucas and his crew in Joshua Tree. And then what I was trying to convince Dave and Lucas and his crew to do is essentially like, hey, we're going to meet up in Joshua Tree. Then let's all like load up and let's go to Newberry Springs, and let's all of us then go to Roy's, and then I'll drop y'all back off at Joshua Tree, and we'll, go about our merry way. And I couldn't get anybody to agree to that commitment. So I had to wait until we all like parted ways or whatever, and David already like started heading back. And then I went up to Newberry Springs by myself. But that's definitely one of those places that like, I mean, I definitely don't want to like put that out there like, oh, every single photographer needs to go to Newberry Springs because it'll overrun the place. It's not a very large town. That whole Lucerne Valley, Johnson Valley stuff, it's all like little small towns, right? That have like, don't even have like stoplights. It's like a stop sign and that's the town.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
I don't know. It's very like it. I don't know that a lot of people like that kind of stuff though, because it is very like drab too, right? It's drab and desolate, and it's not like overwhelmingly beautiful, like looking at like a Teton, you know?
Again, I think the right people will see it. The right people will understand the motive behind it.
Yeah.
I call myself a street documentarian because I'm trying to capture a moment or history, right? I'm trying to document what happened and what can happen or it's going to happen. In a place like Newberry Springs, it's constantly changing. It's never going to be the same twice. So you're actually capturing a sliver of time that no one will ever see again.
Sure.
Because each grain of sand that's there when you take that photo will not be in the same place ever again.
Yeah.
So, the right people will see it. The right people will know. They'll know what you're capturing with the images you capture, and they'll get it.
Do you know the story of the B-52s that are out there?
No, I don't know anything about that area.
Well, have you ever seen a photo? A lot of the popular way that I see this get captured a lot is like with the astrophotographers. Um, are you familiar with Edwards Air Force Base?
Yep.
Okay. So Edwards has, if I understand it right, it's like a radio targeting range that's on the south side of the base. Anyways, they've got a couple of planes out there, right? Like old military aircraft, right? Because they used it back in the day for radio targeting. They had them out there to try to figure out what radar was doing and how it looked and this, that, and the other. Anyways, so there was a pair of B-52 bombers that they had out there, right? They were decommissioned. They were just kind of out there. But apparently when we had that nuclear like stopping treaty thing with Russia saw those B-52s, right, on their satellite and essentially went, this breaks the treaty. So the way that the US went, all right, whatever, we'll make it better. They're not like active or whatever. So they like purposely exploded them into all these pieces. So out there in the desert, near Edwards Air Force Base, are these two B-52s. And there's also this other like prototype nuclear.
And it showed
Yeah.
this guy had whatever that plane you were talking about, this thing here.
Oh, yeah. So that was like a prototype of, I think if I understand it right, was supposed to be like a strategic nuclear bomber, but it never, I guess, made production. And that one specifically, everybody knows that one because its nose cone is real specific to it. Um, but supposedly you're not actually supposed to crawl on those things, but B, the material in them has asbestos and like no chemicals and shit. So like the photos from afar, but all of that stuff is just kind of out there in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's weird how much those areas have these old, like decrepit, rotting artifacts just sort of strewn about the landscape,
That
right?
would, that would be
And
fun to capture.
dude, and all like that's not the only stuff. Like there's all of these little like hidden mystery treasures in a landscape that if you don't know that it's there, you will never know that it's there because they're off, miles off the main road, and the landscape is so kind of disorienting because it's so repetitive that like your mind and the way that you're looking at those the horizon and the landscapes and the mountain ranges and stuff, like you don't pick up the unnatural, like the B-52 off in the distance or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't know. Uh, that's me nerding out on just like I really love the exploring side of it, but I also kind of like you're saying the street documentary or documenting the street, like that's kind of what I feel like is I guess the vibe of what I'm going for all of like those old out of the nowhere places. And again, it's definitely not a unique idea by any means of the measure. There's been a lot of people that have done that. I think there's actually a book, um, Lonely Places, or I mean, a lot of people have done like gigantic studies of, the American Southwest because it is kind of like that.
Yeah, but it's like
But
the Goonies movie, right? When everybody wanted to be an explorer. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's like nonstop. You constantly want to learn what's around, and you want to be in that area and discover and bring up all of those things that are disappearing. They're disappearing quick.
yeah. But even like, so I like to really nerd out on the geology part of it too, because I think that's one of the neat things about the desert. I mean, any of the mountain ranges and all that kind of stuff, right? Like there's stuff to appreciate with geology and science and all those little like nitpicky things wherever you go. But being out in the desert is really cool for me because like being out in washes and being out in valleys and like, those big like scars in the earth and stuff, the way that like the different strata and like geological like layers and stuff lay themselves out is just really, I don't know, that it gets me all jazzed. Right. um I know, I don't know, and it's just really unique because it always kind of feels like you have those places to yourself when you're out there. And being from a city that's just like always concrete and sirens and noise and stimuli and stuff, to be out there kind of like seemingly by yourself and all you hear is like the wind uh like howling through or whatever, or watching, you know, something as ominous and dangerous but also like really awe-inspiring, like a thunderstorm roll in over the mountains into a desert, where you're kind of like, I'm gonna hang out as long as I can, but I need to I need a GTFO, like, because I'm hanging out in a wash,
Yeah.
like, uh, I don't know. It's really inspiring, and I don't think 25-year-old me did not think that, right?
For
It's
sure.
interesting. It's interesting kind of like what getting into photography and finding that part of photographing stuff has brought out that little kernel of like really deep seated joy and fulfillment of something that, you know, 25-year-old me was just not concerned with. But it's almost like it took me back to being like 6 or 7 years old. And I don't know how stupid this is going to sound. I used to collect dirt when I was little, right? Had and so like all of my loved ones would bring me little like baggies of dirt from different places, like sand and this, that, and the other. And I always used to play in the dirt when I was little, but I had this like weird little collection of like baggies of sand and dirt and like different soil and stuff when I was little. And I almost kind of forgot that I did that until I discovered this again. Right. Um, and now instead of collecting little baggies of dirt because it's illegal as shit to do that, I can photograph all of those things. And they're kind of like little baggies. Um, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's neat to me. Um, it brings out a really, especially nowadays because we have so much information that's like readily available to us. It's neat to be curious again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, and not because it's a skill that you want to learn because you need to get better at a job or you need a promotion or something. Like it's just a general, very, I guess, genuine curiosity about what came before, what is now, and what hopefully will be there after. And, you know, maybe one of these days I'll still upon this or bone. That would be tight. Or like a shark tooth or
Yeah.
something that I can take a bunch of photos of. What you Googling there?
I'm checking out the whole area.
Oh, really?
I've never seen it. So it's interesting to see just how vast it really is.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of space to cover. And
Yeah.
even in that like that little town where you know Dave did the video or whatever with me,
Yep.
that's a very small town, right? That area is not big. It's surrounded by a really large state park, which is where we spent most of our time, right? We were just kind of exploring a couple of spaces or spots in the state park. But it becomes readily apparent that like I could dedicate the rest of my life to exploring that area and I wouldn't scratch the surface. There's just so much, you know, um, so many little nooks and crannies and valleys and peaks and routes and you know, dry lake beds and
Yeah.
playas and fault lines and like just all this crazy stuff. Like that area down there is essentially like boxed in by three fault lines, one being the San Andreas, but there's also the San Jacinto fault line and like whole lot of tectonic stuff. So I was being very literal when I said like that trip was a myriad of firsts. Like got to like meet strangers off the internet and take photos for the first time, but I also lived through my first earthquake ever because Texas does not have earthquakes,
Yeah.
right? Um and then coming home like drove through uh like thunder snow just randomly, right? When I was coming through New Mexico, I'm like rolling up on New Mexico from the Arizona border and it's sunny. So that photo that I have on that I was posting about yesterday, the one of that the little van or whatever on the
I was about
roadside
to
or
ask
whatever.
about that one, the Volkswagen Works one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that little shop is right outside of Holbrook, Arizona. I think it's actually in Holbrook. Um, and Holbrook, you would recognize because most people that go to Holbrook for Route 66, take photos of that Wigwam motel with all the
Okay.
teepees, right? Because they have like classic cars and stuff out in front of those little motel hut things or whatever, right? But again, kind of like the Royce thing, I felt like every time I've driven by there, there is another photographer in the parking lot taking the same photo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like their version of it. And so that day, so there's that photo, right? That photo was taken 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that, right? Uh, Maybe a little bit earlier, judging by the sun. I don't know. It's probably 11 to noon, something like that, right? So that same day, I was going from Winslow, Arizona to I was going to stay in Roswell that night. So it was like I think a 13-hour drive or something. I can't remember. Um, so I took that set of photos and then just sort of kept on driving. And as I'm like running up on the Arizona, New Mexico border, off in the distance, I see the mountain range, like central New Mexican mountain range. I can't remember what they're called, but um, I think they're actually called the Black Mountains. I may be wrong about that. But as I'm driving, I start seeing like these really crazy looking clouds forming, right? And they didn't look angry clouds, but off on the horizon as I'm driving, sunny, like that picture weather, right? Surrounding me, off in the distance where I'm heading, I am seeing these clouds moving with like disturbance looking. And as as I'm driving and I'm watching, these black mountains are turning white as the clouds, and I'm like, uh-oh. Like that's where I'm going. So right on the Arizona.
I'm from Texas. I don't drive in snow.
Correct. 100%. I had never driven in snow before, right? I didn't have an option. I was like, I guess this is going to be another first. Fuck it. Right? And so right at the Arizona New Mexico border, there's a like a fueling station, and they sell barbecue and stuff. But thankfully, like they had cell signal out there, and so I like looked at the weather and it was like, "Oh, those are like blizzard warnings. Special severe weather warning." Huh. Okay. So cool. Right? And so I was just like, well, I'll fill up here because I guess I'm going to have to like four-wheel drive my way across this entire mountain range or whatever. Um, but so I drove through, I think it was like 4 snowstorms that kept on like being intermittent. But out there in the middle of New Mexico is the Very Large Array. Are you familiar with what that is?
No.
So the VLA is there. If scroll a little bit farther on my timeline and you'll find the photo. But essentially out there in the desert is this big satellite array, like huge satellites, right? And a ass ton of them on railroad tracks with their own like big ass like hangars and shit that they can pull them and move them around in and stuff. And while that was going on, I rolled up on VLA. So like VLA is like the way that I put it was like I drove through snowstorms and like ended up in HR Geiger's wet dream. Because it looked like a scene out of like Covenant,
Yeah.
you know? I couldn't get close enough to get like the scale of the dishes from where I was, and I only had the 50 millimeter lens on there. So I was trying to take photos from as close as I could get, which was the main road. But man, there's a couple of images, like I haven't posted all of them. I posted like one square crop of it, uh, that to this day is probably one of the closest current images that when I saw the scene in my head as I was trying to photograph it, and like after I finished the post edit of it, I was like, oh yeah, this was exactly the vision that I wanted this image to come out as. And it was completely by chance. You know what I mean? So, but the dichotomy of that, like both of those images literally taken the same day, just several hours apart, right? Um, and without any intent, just kind of driving along, like looking for stuff that grabbed my eyeball,
Yeah.
right? Um, that's the only regret that I think I have. I wish I would have had a longer telephoto lens, because at this point, all I have is primes, short of the 16 to 35 that's for the Sony. And, you know, that doesn't exactly reach out and touch anything. uh, but, oh, yeah. So that middle photo that you're looking at,
Newberry Springs. This one?
yeah, that's Newberry Springs.
That's crazy.
That's one of the little like homesteady houses.
Yeah.
But that one's just like a shed. But yeah, like in that area is so big that I did not find all of the places because I ran out of time and I ran out of light. And my fat ass was having struggles shimmying my way through the dune sand with all the camera gear on my back.
You're like, God, I bought Leicas because they're smaller.
I don't know, dude. I think, how do I put this? I think probably what anybody that's been following along for a little while now, that, and for anybody that like comes in, I'm not afraid to show how I'm experimenting and learning.
Yeah.
Right. I think one of the things I'm enjoying right now in this moment about Instagram, because about a year ago, I was about to just delete the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Right. Because I felt like I was doing a disservice to putting stuff out there just for AI to train off of, essentially. Right. But right now I'm kind of in this headspace where it's been fun to, in part because I'm learning film and discovering that side of it, right? But also like being able to experiment and learn and almost kind of like visually document that process. Because essentially everything that's I have up on, well, at least Instagram right now is only from Christmas of 23 forward.
Well, yeah, because you got the fragile.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's Italian. But no, dude, I mean, I don't know. I think that part's been really fun, and being able to share that part of it has been probably more fulfilling than I expected when I first started, like, because I didn't really have a new strategy, right? I was just like, I'm learning a new thing. I want to have a good, I guess, accounting so that when I look back on the posts from Christmas of 23 in Christmas of 24, to be able to kind of be like, oh, in that same way that back when I was like playing a guitar, and from the first song that I like struggle bust through trying to learn, to looking back on it after I had, written like our own songs and stuff and being like, you know what I mean? That's kind of what like the fun that I'm getting from it right now. And even those like little niblets of like yesterday, that kind of like the dissertation, right?
Yeah.
That's been really fun to be able to kind of share those little nerdy nuggets of not even that like I'm the only one that's ever figured that out, but at least in maybe my sphere, it's a path that somebody else did not think of, like, oh, like that light bulb goes on. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder why I'm getting weird, inconsistent results in mirrorless scanning of my negatives, right? Like, why is it weird and why does it shift and this, that, the thing? So, like, to me, the C1 thing, that'd be cool because you can correct the color science of the camera that you're using to scan the negative before you convert it in Negative Lab Pro. So you end up having a more consistent workflow at that point that has a more predictable outcome for the effort that you've put in,
Yeah.
right? I've never heard anyone mention that before, right? And it was just one of those like little niblets of, I wonder, right? That sent me down on a tangent that had me typing out a thesis paper on color profiles
I was like,
or
oh,
camera color science, right?
yeah.
Um, I don't know. It's been really rewarding, I think. Uh, and you know, one of the funny things, this was unexpected. I'll tell you this. One of the things that I think putting myself out there more is very much kind of forcing me to rethink is letting photos breathe as they are, right? The more I do this and the more I repeat every day, the less time I'm spending on post processing. Like, and I don't think that that's necessarily an uncommon experience with photographers. Like, I definitely know that like when I started, I was part of that like, ooh, HDR is cool. Let me like go ape shit on like halos. No, no, no. I need to resharpen that and make that even more unpleasing to my eye because it looks so grungy. I would like to see that one teensy tiny pixel as obvious as fly shit on a white wall. That's what I want that pixel to look like, right? And then like that stage of like, oh, I can completely wash out black with the tone slider. Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm going to do in every single image, right? The more that I do this, I think one of the things that's been kind of neat about the film, learning film too, is allowing those stocks to kind of breathe and be what they are. And then posting them without a whole lot of like, oh, I need to have a consistent feed. I need to have continuity, blah, 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 like that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Like, I think one of the things that you probably see, like, I don't feel like, anyways, like a gigantic cohesive, like, wall or
Yeah.
grid or whatever. But I think it reflects my mood and my attitude towards where I'm going with this, right? Um, and learning film and then kind of like applying those same principles that I'm learning as I'm looking over, film scans and stuff like that. It's allowing, I guess, a better acceptance of a digital image to be what it is in the same manner that I'm trying to have a natural looking film image that essentially is what it is, short of, you know, like dodging and burning and maybe like a little bit of cropping and like vignetting and stuff like that and like evening out tones, but not like really crazy shifts one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um, I'm pretty excited to see how that shakes itself out.
I feel like all your edits are very intentional. Everything you do is intentional. There's no just I'm going to take this slider and put it all the way to maximum.
Winging it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to call it because it's 3 hours and 13 minutes.
Hey, we just hit midnight. Look at that.
No,
Ding, ding.
it's only 10. I haven't had dinner yet, so.
Nor have I.
Dude, it's midnight.
Uh-huh.
No, I think we got lots of awesomeness. So
yeah, good luck editing this all down.
this one's gonna take some time, but I'll send you a copy for sure.
No, it's cool. I mean, I trust you, dude. I don't need you to it's not necessary.
You'll get the pre-copy anyway, so you have it a couple days before it comes out.
Okay. I will say I appreciate you continuing this with me because I feel like this one was more productive than the last one.
You know what? If we need to do a part 4, I'm all for it.
Just call it an ongoing series.
I just enjoy shooting the shit with you, so.
Same.
Rob Hand?
I recognize the last name, but I can't put an image to that name.
He's Route 66 guy.
Oh, really?
So this guy. So I don't know if you can see him here. Or if you're out at your phone, so.
Huh. Well, I follow him. So.
Yeah, so he does a lot of old school stuff. So he's like super, super talented. So he's on tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, yeah. He's in Newberry Springs.
Oh, is he?
See that Airstream?
Yeah.
That's a Newberry Springs thing.
Okay.
That's him. Okay. Yeah. He sells a lot of prints. Yeah, okay.
I think he's from back east, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's cool.
I look forward to hearing him. He's an older dude, so he's been doing it for a while. So I love hearing the transition from old school techniques into current.
Oh yeah.
All right, brother. I'm gonna eat because I'm dying here. And,
yeah, dude.
My dogs haven't eaten yet, and they're sitting outside the door. I can hear them. They're
what
like,
in the actual fuck?
They're like, our dinner was like 3 hours ago. You asswipe.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. All right, dude. Well.
All right, man. Have a good night.
All right, dude. You too. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our show, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS or on the internet at www.lifeofphys.com. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day.